Chapter 467. Looking at the empty houses around them and the messy stalls on the small road, the stall owner seemed to be in a hurry when he left. He even knocked over two small tables, and some fruits rolled on the ground as if a ferocious beast had passed through. Looking into the distance, he could see many people running in the same direction. Some people were even running out of their houses. The middle-aged man he had just seen was also in the crowd. Looking at his panicked expression, he seemed to have heard some terrible news. Stepping over a small bridge and walking to the other end of the village, they saw the fenced area. It was as if everyone in the village had run over. Even the willow catkins on the shore seemed a little depressing when they floated. Yin Nuashing sniffed and sensed something unusual. The smell of blood is very strong. Yuan Shi and the others couldn't help but frown when they heard that. They walked faster. "Uncle Feng, what happened?" Yuan Shi walked to the middle-aged man and asked quickly. The middle-aged man turned around and looked at Yin Nuashing and the others in horror. He said in a low voice, "There's another murder in the village." Again? Yin Nuashing caught the word but didn't feel much of a shock. In the world of cultivators, people died every day. It was just that this was a peaceful village that stood aloof from worldly affairs. That was why there was such a big commotion when there was a murder. It's not been more than once. It's not the first time. In the past 2 years, people would often die mysteriously, and their deaths can only be described as tragic. And it's not just in our village, it's the same in the neighboring villages. The same thing happened in the neighboring villages one after another, but it's relatively rare in our village. The middle-aged man who was addressed as Uncle Feng by Yuan, she was so anxious that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Moreover, it said that it's all done by one person. But our village hasn't offended anyone in recent years. Just a year and a half ago, people from the Dragon Mist Empire got involved in the investigation. But after so long, they still couldn't find the culprit. Uncle Feng said quickly. Dragon Mist Empire? Yin Nuashing was puzzled. Was the place they were in now under the jurisdiction of an empire? You don't know. Seeing his puzzled look, it was Uncle Feng's turn to be stunned. However, he waved his hand and said, "We'll talk about this later, Clang." As soon as Uncle Feng finished his words, the sound of a bell could be heard from afar. It sounded leisurely with a tinge of coldness, as though it was mourning for the dead. As soon as the bell rang, the surrounding villagers all rushed towards a certain direction. Murmurs could be heard, and Yin Nuashing caught hold of an important piece of news. The people from the Dragon Mist Empire had arrived. The people from the Empire are here. The village bell won't ring unless it's a dangerous moment. I'm afraid the village chief wants to summon us to talk about something. Little brother, you guys should stay here or leave first. When Uncle Feng heard the bell, he sighed and said to Yuan Shi. Then, he rushed in the direction where the crowd had left. After watching the crowd leave, the place suddenly became empty. Yin Nuashing looked at the place where the crowd had gathered just now. There was a house with only one floor. The door was ajar, and the smell of blood surged into Yin Nuashing's nose. He frowned. How many people had died in such a strong smell of blood? Yin Nuashing walked to the side of the house and leaned half of his body in. He gently pushed the door open, and then he saw a scene that he would never forget. A middle-aged man was lying on the floor of the house. His eyes were tightly shut, and there was still a peaceful look on his face. It was as if he didn't suffer any pain when he died. A beautiful lotus flower pierced through his back and bloomed on his chest. The blood on the petals was slowly dripping down. The only wound caused all the blood in his body to leave the body. On the spacious ground, a strange scene was drawn. A noble demon with a bloody mouth was devouring the man's soul, and the man was lying in the center of the painting. Yin Nuashing suddenly turned around and stopped the curious scene. He carried her to the side and gently caressed her delicate face. He said softly, "Lass, you don't look." Startled by Yin Nuashing's sudden action, Xian raised his head. Mei Mao looked at his eyes strangely, but she couldn't see anything in them. However, she was very obedient to his words, so she didn't ask anything. Since he said she couldn't look, then she shouldn't look. Okay. Xian nodded and smiled sweetly. She said, "I'll be outside and won't go in. Little Xing Xing, call me if you need anything." Yin Nuoxing smiled and gently patted her head. Then, he turned and walked into the house. Yuan Shi and Qin Yin also saw this strange scene and frowned. Yi Shi didn't react at all. After living for so many years, she had seen everything. How could she be afraid of this thing? Should I say it's art or a pervert? Qin Yin looked for a while and turned her gaze away in disgust. She fanned her jade-like hands in front of her. The strong smell of blood made her uncomfortable. The one who did this is either a pervert or a demon. Yuan Shi frowned and squatted down to take a look. Blood flowed out of the body, but the body didn't dry up. The lotus flower on the chest was even more strange. It seemed to have pierced into the body from the back. The long roots tied the whole person up. Combined with the painting on the ground, it looked like some kind of ritual was being held. Could it be some kind of ritual? Yin Nuoxing asked. He didn't look at it for too long. He was afraid that if he looked at it for too long, he would get depressed. I don't know about other places. Anyway, there's no such ritual in the realm of the gods. Moreover, there's no sign of energy flow, so it shouldn't be. Yi Shi shook her head. However, she wasn't very sure. Who knew if it was a ritual unique to this small world that she didn't know about? The air suddenly quieted down. The four of them looked at each other. After a long time, their eyes met. For a moment, they wanted to say something, but they didn't know what to say. Well, it's not up to us to care about this. Shall we just ignore it? Yin Nuoxing sighed and looked at Yuan Shi. According to him, ignoring this matter should be the best outcome. He didn't want to care about such a strange thing. Okay. Qin Yin and Yi Shi nodded. Yuan Shi hesitated for a moment, but also nodded. After all, they were just passers-by. For the time being, they didn't have the intention to meddle in other people's business. Xing Xing, someone is here. Zian knocked on the door and said softly. Yin Nuoxing and the others looked outside. They looked at each other, nodded, and walked out of the door. Yin Nuoxing was a little curious when he heard that people from the Dragon Mist Empire had come. This was a matter of the lower class. Why would an empire be involved? When he walked out, he was even more confused because he saw 4 people walking quickly from the small bridge. Among them, there was a young man with a gloomy face and 3 burly men. You are from the Dragon Mist Empire? Yin Nuoxing raised his eyebrows. Yes, you look unfamiliar. May I know why you're visiting this small village? The gloomy young man was also a little surprised. He cupped his hands. He didn't expect to meet the people he met by chance last night again today. It's nothing. We are from the roaming cloud continent. We just happened to settle down here. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand. He looked at the small house behind him and then looked at the young man. He said, Is the person last night the murderer? I don't know. The young man shook his head and said faintly. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. He felt that this conversation couldn't continue. The young man with a gloomy face swept his gaze across the group. If he looked into their eyes, he would feel a piercing pain in his eyes. This made his heart skip a beat, and he quickly averted his gaze. That little girl gave him the strongest feeling. When did my Dragon Mist Empire have these 5 terrifying people? The gloomy young man was frightened by his own perception. He knew that the strength of these 5 people must be far beyond his. That was why he felt this way. Maybe these 5 people can help us find that. The gloomy young man thought of an idea that scared himself. However, he couldn't get out of his mind. It was as if it had taken root in his mind. Seeing the gloomy young man's expression flickering, Yin Nuoxing had a bad feeling. He quickly cupped his hands and said, If there's nothing else, we will take our leave. After he finished speaking, he was about to leave with Zian and the others. However, he suddenly heard the gloomy young man laugh. My friend, do you want to hear this long story? Story? Yin Nuoxing paused and turned his head. He saw the gloomy young man looking at the blood-stained house. There was a complicated look in his eyes. He didn't know what he was thinking. Yes, a story. A story that started 3 years ago when a mystery dragon ritual stopped and the fire of sacrifice didn't descend. The gloomy young man also turned around and walked towards Yin Nuoxing and the others. He stopped in front of them. Fire of sacrifice? Hearing these words, Yin Nuoxing's hand trembled slightly. Yuan Shi and the others fixed their gazes on the former. This so-called fire of sacrifice, could it be? After thinking for a while, Yin Nuashing nodded and followed the gloomy young man. He said, "Don't we need to care about that place? Don't worry about it." He allowed a long sigh and shook his head. He said, "It's useless even if we look at it. We haven't found it after so long. I don't think that looking at another scene will bring us any additional benefits." When they reached the small bridge, the gloomy young man stopped. He turned around and leaned against the pier. He looked at Yin Nuashing and asked softly, "Have you participated in the real mystery dragon ritual?" Yin Nuashing shook his head. Not to mention the real mystery dragon ritual, he hadn't even participated in the fake one. Seeing this, the gloomy young man nodded. He twirled a strand of hair with his fingers and sorted out his thoughts. Then he said, "The mystery dragon ritual is divided into two parts. The first is a celebratory event that is open to ordinary people. This is not the real mystery dragon ritual. The real mystery dragon ritual is a ritual that is jointly held by the 8 big empires. The upper echelons of the 8 big empires gather together and choose 8 priests. The most outstanding priests are allowed to summon the fire of sacrifice through the priest dance. This one is open to martial artists. Of course, without the recommendation of the people from the empires, you can't participate." So troublesome. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. But since this was the case, the so-called real mystery dragon ritual was probably not that simple. Yuchen didn't explain it to them in detail. As for the specifics, I haven't participated in the past, so I don't know what the fire of sacrifice is. 3 years ago, when I wanted to participate, there was an accident. The gloomy young man let out a long sigh. There seemed to be some regret in his sigh. The sacred relic needed for the ritual, the Dragon Mist Empire's sacred relic, was snatched away at the site of the ritual. Moreover, it was snatched away by a single person. The gloomy young man gritted his teeth and couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. To have the sacred relic of the ritual taken away in front of the 8 big empires was a disgrace to the entire empire. When Yin Nuashing heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He sent a telepathic message to Xian and the others. The person who destroyed the ritual is also very powerful. To snatch something away in front of so many powerful people. Do you think it's the work of the elites from the realm of the gods? Yuan Shi also sent a telepathic message. That's hard to say. Yin Nuashing smiled faintly. The gloomy young man took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said softly, "After that, I've been out searching for the sacred relic of the Dragon Mist Empire. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I sensed a reaction from the sacred relic in this remote southern region that I rushed here from the Empire. When I arrived at the place where the reaction came from, I saw that kind of scene. Have you ever thought that this could be done by people from other empires?" Yin Nuashing asked casually. We thought about it at first, but it's not up to me to prove this kind of thing." The gloomy young man smiled bitterly and shook his head. Chapter 468. The gloomy young man's words were still echoing in his ears. Yin Nuashing scratched his head. Since the young man had already made himself clear, how could he not know what the young man was thinking? He wanted them to help him find the so-called sacred relic. If the sacred relic is taken away, not only will the profound dragon ritual be unable to proceed, it will also damage the reputation of the Dragon Mist Empire. The 8 great empires have always kept a close eye on the sacred relic, and there has never been a case of it being taken away. Our Dragon Mist Empire is the first case. The gloomy young man couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This was truly unprecedented and would probably never happen again in the future. The sacred relic is the symbol of every empire. Other people in the empire, even the imperial family, are secretly gathering people to track down the sacred relic's whereabouts. However, this matter must not be leaked, and everything is done in secret. The gloomy young man let out a long sigh. "So, may I borrow your strength?" The gloomy young man smiled slightly, cupped his hands, and asked respectfully, "What's the reason? If I help you find the so-called sacred relic, what benefits will I get?" Yin Nuashing decided to make it clear. He couldn't help for free. If he worked for half a year and found out that the sacrificial fire wasn't the Een spirit fire, he would lose out. If you can help us find the sacred relic, this year's profound dragon ritual can proceed as normal. I will then bring you to participate in the real profound dragon ritual. This will require the guidance of the imperial family. Of course, this is only one of the reasons. The Dragon Mist Empire will definitely not treat you unfairly. The gloomy young man couldn't help but laugh when he heard Yin Nuoxing's words. You are from the imperial family? Yin Nuoxing raised his eyes slightly and glanced at the gloomy young man. This guy is from the imperial family? Shouldn't the imperial family stay behind the scenes? Why would he come out to look for the sacred relic? The gloomy young man smiled faintly and cupped his hands, saying, the third prince of the Dragon Mist Empire, Yiding. Feeling the faintly discernible aura of a superior being emitted by this young man, Yin Nuoxing let out a sigh and dragged out the syllable, causing Yiding to bitterly smile. I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? Yin Nuoxing picked up a leaf and raised it above her head. She faced the sun and spun it for a while before looking at Yiding with a faint smile. Yiding's expression changed slightly as he laughed bitterly. Just as he was about to say something, Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and said lightly, we will not participate in your royal family's battle. We are only responsible for finding the sacred object and participating in the profound dragon ritual. Hearing this, Yiding's expression froze, but he sighed bitterly in his heart. He didn't expect that this mysterious youth, who looked younger than him, would see through everything. Just as Yin Nuoxing had said, this search for the relic was also related to the matter of the crown prince. His two elder brothers and a few others weren't simple people. Other than searching for the relic, they also wanted to find a strong person who could help them ascend to the throne. So, what should we do? Yin Nuoxing saw that he was in a daze, so she waved her hand in front of him and said, what does the relic look like? Is there anything that can locate its current location? Yiding was pulled out of his thoughts by Yin Nuoxing's voice. He was stunned for a moment before he reacted and said, the relic of the Dragon Mist Empire should be something like this. As Yiding spoke, he gestured in the air with his hands, drawing a long and slender cross. It looked like a cross, but it didn't look like one. It looked more like something that was attached to the outside, causing Yin Nuoxing and the others to be confused. You haven't seen it before? Yin Nuoxing covered her face, speechless. Other than Father and the priest who held the ceremony, no one else can see the relic. I only caught a glimpse of it during the handover, but I didn't see what it was in detail. I only saw a shadow of it in my mind, Yiding said helplessly. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. How could she find something without a target? Try again. Suddenly, Qin Yin took a step forward and said softly. Yiding was stunned for a moment before he nodded and slowly gestured the relic that he had caught a glimpse of. Qin Yin stared at Yiding's hands without blinking. Then, she raised her right hand, and the immortal qi in her body rolled slightly. It gushed out from her palm and slowly condensed into the shape of an object. Yiding, who was gesturing with his hands, was so shocked that his hands trembled slightly when he saw that Qin Yin could condense an object with energy. He then took a deep breath and focused on slowly drawing out the object. Someone who can condense an object with energy must be at least at the heaven rank. Why didn't I know that there was such a young heaven rank powerhouse in the Dragon Mist Empire? There aren't many heaven rank powerhouses in the Dragon Mist Empire either. After a long time, Yiding's hands finally stopped. The object in Qin Yan's hands also stopped moving and slowly revealed the shape of an object. It was a sword that was bound by two chains, or rather, it was sealed. It doesn't seem like it, but it seems like it. Yiding scratched his head. He didn't ask about Yin Nuoxing and the other strength. Experts of this level, if they were unhappy, it would be easy for them to destroy him. He was already glad that they were still talking quietly. Qin Yin tilted her head and looked at Yin Nuoxing. Young Master Yin, why don't you give it a try? There's no need for that. Since you said it looks like it, it should be more or less like that. We just have to remember what this thing looks like. It can't be wandering around anyway, so it should still be in someone's hands. If that's the case, it's going to be very difficult. Yin Nuoxing murmured, shaking her head and rubbing her fingers together. Do you know who the person who snatched the relic at the Mystery Dragon ritual was? Yin Nuoxing turned her gaze to Yiding. only to see that the latter's expression had become a little strange. His already gloomy face became even darker. After a long while, he said, "The person who snatched the relic was the priest who held the ritual." Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched when she heard this. What was going on? The priest's family has been turned upside down. They also said that they don't know where he went. The priests of the empire will never leave the imperial family after becoming priests, so it's normal that they don't know, Yi Ding explained. Yin Nuoxing shrugged. Just as she was about to say something, her gaze suddenly shifted. Yuan Shi and the rest were also shocked. They all looked towards the north and exclaimed, "What a powerful energy! At the very least, it is the energy emitted by a high-grade magic weapon." Yin Nuoxing muttered. He turned his head and looked at Yi Ding, only to see that there was some joy and confusion in the latter's eyes. Before he could ask anything, he saw a gigantic green pillar of light rising from the horizon like a pillar to the sky. The brilliant green light could be clearly seen from thousands of miles away. The relic! At this moment, Yi Ding finally cried out in surprise. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing's brows furrowed deeply. She looked toward the sky. Her evil spirit I saw through the endless distance and saw the end of the light pillar. At the sky, where the light pillar stopped, ripples spread out as if it had touched something. The end of the sky, looking at the place where the light pillar reached, the sky seemed to have an end. It was like a solid barrier that was indestructible. That was probably the end of the world. Let's go and take a look first. Yin Nuoxing shouted lightly, and then surging wind elemental energy swept out and swept up Yi Ding's group of four. He waved his hand, and then he flashed swiftly towards that direction. Ziyin and the others hurriedly followed behind him. Being lifted up by a gust of wind, Yi Ding felt his feet leave the ground before he could react. When he came back to his senses, he was already in midair, causing them to cry out in shock. It's really a heaven-rank expert. Seeing Yin Nuoxing and the rest soaring in the sky, Yi Ding's thoughts became more certain. He hurriedly suppressed the shock in his heart and fiercely exhaled. He didn't know if the arrival of these people was a disaster or a blessing for the Dragon Mist Empire. Only heaven-rank experts could fly in the sky. This was also his lifelong cultivation goal. He hoped that one day he could soar in the sky. He didn't expect that this wish would come true in advance. Not long after flying, Yin Nuoxing and the others saw the resplendent pillar of light tremble slightly and gradually become blurry, causing his gaze to congeal. Want to run? Clenching their teeth, light essence surged within their bodies, carrying everyone. In the next instant, their figures turned into a beam of light, rapidly rushing towards the place where the beam of light had disappeared. A few alarm screams could be heard in the sky. This was a valley. The mountain peaks that were thousands of feet high stood erect like the tip of a knife. Strange rocks were rugged, and there were vertical cliffs that were more than 100 feet high everywhere. If an ordinary person were to pass by here, they would fall into the abyss if they were not careful. Without the ability to fly, they would die without a doubt. In a valley surrounded by 5 knife peaks, strange patterns extended from the foot of the 5 knife peaks and intertwined to form a huge array in the middle of the valley. This place seemed to be an altar. An inexplicable aura circulated here, making this place very mysterious. In the center of the array, a beautiful figure was sitting cross-legged. A cool breeze blew past and blew at her close-fitting robe, outlining her beautiful curves. Her long black hair fell to the ground, and she wore a grand ornament on her head like a crown. On her ethereal and beautiful face, large beads of cold sweat slid down her smooth forehead. Her pearly white teeth gently bit her crimson lips, revealing a somewhat stubborn look. Pooh! After a moment, the woman's beautiful face turned red, and she couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Her bright eyes dimmed a little, and her expression changed slightly, as if she was in disbelief. It's been 3 years. Why is it still not working? In a low murmur, there was a hint of disappointment. She looked indifferently at the green light in front of her. After a long time, she could only sigh helplessly. With a wave of her sleeve, She put away the green light and stood up slowly. When she stood up, her delicate body was still trembling. After pausing for a moment, the woman walked towards the only entrance of the valley. After causing such a big commotion, there would be people coming soon. She had to leave this place quickly. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of rushing wind erupted from the horizon. The woman had just walked to the entrance when she hurriedly turned her head in shock. She saw a cold light sweep across the sky. A huge metal sword that was 100,000 feet in size appeared in the sky and rushed towards her. Mei Mao stared in shock at the gigantic metal sword that was charging towards her. Even though she couldn't see it, she could feel that wherever the gigantic metal sword passed, even space would be sliced in half. At that moment, she couldn't care less about the injuries in her body. She gathered the last bit of strength she had left and gathered it in her feet. She stomped on the ground, and her body retreated rapidly. The huge iron sword also arrived in an instant as she retreated. The gigantic metal sword brushed past the three-blade peaks in the valley and sliced them in half. It forcefully dug into the ground and flipped the flat valley upside down. Mountain rocks flew hundreds of meters, and the heavy weight caused the ground to collapse by a few meters. It was as if an earthquake had occurred in the valley. In the distance, several of the 10,000 feet tall mountain peaks were shaken and collapsed. The gigantic shadow came crashing down from the sky. The woman's small and skinny figure quickly fled between the mountains, narrowly dodging the gigantic rocks that were flying towards her. She quickly flew to the edge of the mountain range. Seeing that she was about to leave this area, the woman rejoiced and increased her speed. However, at this moment, a shadow that blotted out the sky and covered the entire area around her, causing her eyes to harden. She stiffly lifted her head and saw the tallest mountain in the Blade Peak mountain range slowly collapsing toward her. If she was at her peak condition, she would definitely have no problem dodging such a large size. However, in her current state, it was difficult for her to make any large movements. She could only watch as the gigantic mountain came crashing down towards her. A trace of unwillingness flashed across the depths of her eyes. She turned her head and looked at the few figures that had appeared in the sky. Her eyelids involuntarily closed. Chapter 469. The rumbling of thunder reverberated between heaven and earth. Yin Nuoxing and the others floated in midair, looking down at the valley that was constantly collapsing mountains. Smoke and dust covered half the sky. Fortunately, no one usually came to this valley. Otherwise, Yin Nuoxing's attack would be enough to turn this place into a grave for many people. Are you killing people or capturing people? Yuanshi shook his head helplessly as he looked at the destroyed valley. He nudged Yin Nuoxing with his elbow. Does this guy not know how to write the word mercy? I've already been very gentle. I'm just afraid that they'll run away. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and laughed dryly. He didn't expect that a casual attack would flatten the entire valley. Where are they now? Yuanshi rolled his eyes. Yin Nuoxing was taken aback. He laughed dryly and was about to release his spiritual energy from between his eyebrows when he heard Yi Shi's indifferent voice. There's no need to look. There are no signs of life within 100 miles. They either ran away or were casually killed by Brother Nuo. There were still signs of life just now. Yin Nuoxing laughed bitterly. It can't be that serious, right? Yi Ding, are you sure that the Pillar of Light just now was released by the Dragon Mist Empire's sacred object? Yin Nuoxing turned to look at Yi Ding and asked. At this moment, Yi Ding had yet to recover from his shock. What happened today was enough to turn his mind into a pile of mush. Flying in the air and the huge metal sword made him even more curious about Yin Nuoxing and the others. However, on top of this curiosity, there was also a faint layer of reverence. He definitely couldn't afford to be on bad terms with such people. Seeing that he didn't respond, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but poke him with his hand. Yi Ding only reacted after a while. He recalled Yin Nuoxing's question and hurriedly nodded. That's right. I also saw such a strange phenomenon near that small village last time. That was why I searched all the way there. It was just 2 years ago. Yin Nuoxing knocked his head in distress. He didn't catch that person this time. He only saw a shadow, an extremely faint shadow. Of course, he didn't believe that the person was buried under this shattered valley. Does the imperial family have any special methods to find sacred objects? Yin Nuoxing asked again. Yiding pondered for a while and rubbed his chin. After thinking for a while, his eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, but that thing is placed in the forbidden grounds of the imperial family. No one is allowed to enter. Let alone me, even my father wouldn't dare to enter. Furthermore, there must be some clues in order to find it. For example, the appearance, image, aura of that thing. After Yi Ding finished speaking, Yin Nuoxing and the others laughed bitterly. If they were looking for the sacred object now, where would they find anything related to it? As for the appearance of the sacred object, they didn't know if the half-like thing that Qin Yin had condensed could be used. We have to try. If it doesn't work, we'll look for another method. Yin Nuoxing said helplessly. Yi Ding nodded and said, Are we heading back to the imperial palace now? With Sir Yun's speed, I'm afraid we'll be back in 2 hours. He had just personally experienced how terrifying Yin Nuoxing's speed was. A journey of 1,000 miles could be traversed in a few minutes. It was probably too much to say that it would take 2 hours. However, he still didn't know that if Yin Nuoxing traveled at full speed, she would be able to reach the place he mentioned in a few minutes. What about that guy? Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but frown when she recalled the scene she had seen in the small house. That guy. Yi Ding was taken aback, but after thinking for a while, he knew who the person he was talking about was. Soon after, he let out a long sigh, shook his head, and said, That person has cultivated an extremely powerful concealment technique and wears a metal mask. Until now, no one has truly seen his appearance. Every time he leaves one's line of sight, it is impossible to find him again. I don't know if the sacred object is related to him or not, and he has not only left behind his works in this place. Even in the imperial city, there are many people who have been killed by him. There are even some experts who have the strength of the ultimate martial realm, 2 realms higher than him, but they still died at his hands. Works? You make it sound like an artist. Yin Nuoxing curled her lips. In fact, to that person, every time he kills, it's like he's creating something. All living beings are reduced to his drawing board, allowing him to draw as he pleases. Yi Ding's voice was somewhat gloomy. His expression was as gloomy as when they first met. He's a bloodthirsty demon. I've seen even crueler scenes. In his eyes, there's no such thing as mercy. Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned. Only when he mentioned this matter would he show a trace of anger. This made her very curious. Could it be that he knew someone in that murderous maniac's blood debt? Patting Yi Ding's shoulder, Yin Nuoxing said, Tell me where the imperial city is. Of course, she wasn't stupid enough to ask what had happened. Yi Ding was startled for a moment. He coughed dryly and looked at the surroundings. Then, he pointed to the north. Yin Nuoxing nodded. A gust of wind flashed past, and light elements curled around his body. He brought everyone to fly in the direction that Yi Ding had pointed. The profound dragon ritual was a festival that everyone in this small world revered. From the moment they were born, they would hear their elders constantly talking about the creator of this world. It was passed down from generation to generation. It could be said that in this small world, there was no one who didn't know about this ritual. Ordinary people had their own rituals, and martial artists had their own unique rituals. However, this was a secret close to the core of this small world. It was something that every person in power knew. The profound dragon ritual was a dance of worship to the heavens, leading to the descent of the heavenly fire. Ordinary people could only understand it as a symbol of auspicious omen, but for martial artists, it had a different meaning. Of course, not every cultivator could participate in a profound dragon ritual. Especially after the loss of the dragon Mist Empire's sacred artifacts 3 years ago, the profound dragon ritual became an ordinary ritual. After losing any of the 8 sacred artifacts, it could no longer lead to the descent of the heavenly fire. Although the ritual had lost its meaning, some activities that were once associated with the profound dragon ritual didn't stop. Because of this, so strong. Where did that golden-robed young man come from? With just a few moves, he blasted those self-proclaimed geniuses of the Sky River Empire off the stone platform. That speed was so fast that it was impossible to see. He must be a very powerful genius. But why haven't I heard of him before? Look at those who have already won the selection. I heard that the 9 of them came from the same force, and each of them is very powerful. Even the Imperial family members weren't their opponents. With such strength, I'm afraid they have already touched the ultimate martial realm or the soul-forging realm, right? It is even possible that he is already a soul realm expert. I wonder which old monster taught these guys. There are really 9 monsters. A muffled explosion suddenly sounded while everyone was discussing animatedly. Immediately, they saw a figure spitting out blood on the stone platform. The figure was smashed down from the stone platform by the young man in bright golden robes. The figure fell heavily to the ground. His robes were completely tattered, and he fainted. On the other hand, the latter appeared to be completely unharmed, causing everyone to inhale a breath of cold air. Xianglin was defeated with a single slap. She is a genius of the Imperial family. The golden-robed young man cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Thank you for letting me win." His ethereal temperament, coupled with the light smile on his handsome face, immediately caused the surrounding girls to become infatuated. This face had a great killing power for girls. "Boss, you're too slow. I told you to be more straightforward, but you just had to play on the stage. If Little Star finds out, he'll beat you up again." The 8 people below the stage fiercely glared at the golden-robed young man. Hearing them mention his name, the smile on the latter's face fell. He bitterly smiled and jumped off the high stage. "I just wanted to see how strong the people of Sky River City are. Since I got a spot, I don't need to complain." The golden-robed young man winked at the 8 people, but the latter rolled their eyes. This guy was even more playful than them. As the 9 people talked, they walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind many stunned people in the restaurant. They knew that the names of these 9 people would soon cause a storm in Sky River City. Well, I didn't expect the mystery dragon ritual to be divided into real and fake. It shouldn't be a problem for us to get 9 spots. I just don't know how Little Star is doing. The golden-robed young man smiled faintly. Little Star is very low-key. I'm afraid he won't use this kind of martial arts competition to get a spot. However, if he knows about this, he will definitely find a way to participate. The girl in a green robe also said with a light smile. The 9 people laughed at the same time. They didn't need to worry about that guy at all. At this moment, an extremely loud sneeze suddenly sounded from the 2nd floor of a certain restaurant in the Dragon Mist City of the Dragon Mist Empire. It shocked the people downstairs to the point that they raised their gazes in a strange manner. Immediately, they lowered their heads again and ignored it. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his nose, his cheeks twitching. He muttered, "Who's thinking about me?" There are many people who are thinking about Brother Nuo. Jin Wang and the others, Yao Hua and the others, Sister Xianin and the others. Yishi smiled charmingly, her legs lightly swinging. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes, looked at Yi Ding, and said, "Where were you just now?" In the Xianlong continent, there are many strange places that people call forbidden lands, such as the Cave of Devils, the Tomb of the Elves, and the ruins of the ancient gods. They are all very dangerous. Even those who have attained the sky rank may not be able to come out unscathed. However, there's also a legend that in these forbidden lands, there is a passage that leads to a mysterious world. However, this is only a legend. No one has ever seen anyone come out alive, so no one can verify whether this is true. Yi Ding said, "A passage that leads to another world." This sentence echoed in Yin Nuoxing's and the others' minds. Suddenly, they thought of the God's world. Could it be that this world had another passage that led to the God's world? According to Yu Chun, the strongest of this world also knew that this was only a small world. Could it be that they had already found a way to go to the God's world? Could it be that someone had already gone to the God's world? The supreme ancient Cave of Devils is extremely terrifying. It is said that countless people have died in there, including many sky rank cultivators. There are many unknown and terrifying monsters in there. It is said that a demon god lives in there and controls everything in the supreme ancient Cave of Devils. Yi Ding paused for a moment, then continued. As for the Tomb of the Elves, it is the most mysterious place. It is hard to find. Occasionally, it will appear in front of people, but very few people have ever entered it. However, those who have entered it have never come out. Elves? Yin Nuashing was startled. Did such a thing really exist? In the gods' world, the elves should belong to the Yao clan. There were not many records about the elves in the ancient books. If we have the time and the opportunity, it seems like a good idea to go there. Yin Nuashing laughed in his heart. He was excited when he heard the words Forbidden Land. Chapter 470. Seeing Yin Nuashing's interested look, Yi Ding was slightly startled. He opened his mouth and wanted to remind her, but he didn't say anything. He bitterly laughed in his heart. The former's realm wasn't something he could discuss. Seeing that they weren't even afraid of the life forbidden zones, he might have underestimated Yin Nuashing and the others. In reality, Yin Nuashing wasn't afraid at all. She had already entered 2 or 3 of the god realms' forbidden zones. Every time, she narrowly escaped death. She didn't think that the life-forbidden zones of small worlds were more dangerous than the god realms. Just as they were discussing about the restricted area, they suddenly heard a loud voice from downstairs arguing about something. The topic revolved around a few people. Yin Nuashing caught sight of one of the names. He casually turned his gaze and looked at Yi Ding. However, he saw that the latter's eyes contained a smile as he gently shook his head. I'm afraid that the limelight of the younger generation will be taken by the Yi family. The first prince, Yi Daofeng, is a soul realm expert. He's only 1 step away from the Dharma throne. Furthermore, he's walking the hardest path to cultivate Dharma throne. His battle strength is extremely terrifying. The Yi family has 7 sons. Which one of them is simple? Now, even the 7th prince has stepped into the soul realm. The 6th and 5th princesses are experts at the peak of the soul realm. They're only 1 step away from the soul king realm. In this dragon mist empire, it's hard to find anyone who can compete with them. It's said that the 3rd prince, Yi Ding, killed a martial king expert when he was in the soul realm. I wonder if that's true? Hearing this, Yin Nuashing glanced at Yi Ding. However, she discovered that he didn't reveal any arrogant expression as she imagined. Instead, he appeared calm and wasn't as interested as when others were talking about his siblings. I feel that your family should be quite harmonious. Why do you need to borrow external forces? What about that? Yin Nuashing took a sip of tea and casually asked. Hearing this, Yi Ding's expression froze. A glint flashed through his eyes, but he bitterly sighed and shook his head. Mr. Yin is not a member of the imperial family, so you don't understand the sorrow of the imperial family. Even if I respect my brothers, and they don't have any thoughts of fighting, as long as the imperial family exists, fighting between brothers is unavoidable. I still miss the harmonious life we have now. The 7 brothers are jumping up and down at home, but Yi Ding sighed sadly. A trace of tears actually appeared in his eyes, causing Yin Nuashing and the others to be stunned. Then they heard him continue, What will the future be like? Yin Nuashing was silent. As a member of an aristocratic family, he probably had his own troubles that he couldn't understand. Hey, have you heard? Not long ago, 9 monstrous geniuses appeared out of nowhere in the Sky River Empire. They defeated the geniuses of the Cheong family. Not only that, in the entire Sky River City, no one in the younger generation can defeat them. Even the disciples of the big forces who were defeated by them can't be taught a lesson. Hearing this abruptly, Yin Nuashing frowned, and a strange look appeared on his face. 9 people, it can't be those 9, right? Is it true? The Sky River Empire is millions of miles away from here. It should take at least half a month for the news to be transmitted. How did you know? Even the Jade Slip message from the other side was transmitted here. They must be very monstrous geniuses, otherwise there wouldn't be such a big movement. I heard that the 9 people are wearing different clothes. It's very obvious that the clothes of the 9 people are in different colors, but they claim that they are all from the same sect. Which master taught these 9 monstrous geniuses? Hearing this, Yin Nuashing was completely sure that it was definitely Yao Hua and the others. He couldn't help but cover his face. He was still worried that Nightmare would make some earth-shattering news, but Yao Hua and the others have already made a big noise. Little Star, are you worried that something will happen to Sister Mu Ling and the others? Seeing his strange expression, Xian asked, A little bit, but I'm not very worried. I'm still very confident in their strength. If something big happens, I'll take care of it. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. At this time, the jade slip in Yi Ding's hand also lit up, and a stream of information flowed into his mind, making his face change slightly. He raised his head and said, It's true, Mr. Yun. Do you know the 9 people from the Sky River Empire? Yin Nuoxing nodded helplessly. Seeing the worry in his eyes, Yi Ding chuckled and said, Mr. Yun, you don't have to worry. They will participate in the profound dragon ritual with their strength. If something happens, the Sky River Imperial family will come forward and recruit them. Aren't the participants of the profound dragon ritual led by someone from the Imperial family? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Yes, every year when the profound dragon ritual is approaching, the major restaurants in the Imperial City will open up their stone platforms for martial arts competitions. If the winners can advance triumphantly and finally win in the Imperial family's arena, they will be able to participate in the profound dragon ritual together. Yi Ding smiled. So I'm going through the back door. Yin Nuoxing covered his face, then sighed and said, Well, I don't like to compete in the arena anyway. So what if I'm going through the back door? Yi Ding smiled bitterly. If you go up there, it's not called a martial arts competition, it's called a killing. In the entire Dragon Mist Empire, and even in the 8 great empires, it's hard to find people who are on par with Yin Nuoxing, let alone in Dragon Mist City. Mr. Yun, those who are in the martial rank or Dharma rank can directly become guests of the Imperial family. They don't need to participate in the martial arts competition. Yi Ding said, Then aren't they going to play? Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Seeing Yi Ding's puzzled look, he couldn't help but say, Those 9 guys, their cultivation level is even higher than mine. Yi Ding smiled bitterly. This news spread very quickly. I'm afraid that even the other empires have received the news. Plus, there are some troublesome matters. Yi Ding scratched the table with his fingernails. After a while, he said, It's been 3 years since the profound dragon ritual has really been held. The other empires are getting impatient. If we can't ignite the heavenly fire this year, I'm afraid there will be trouble. Are we going to attack the Dragon Mist Empire? Yin Nuoxing asked softly. That's a possibility. Yi Ding nodded. That was why their actions had sped up. However, ever since they saw the reaction of the sacred relic 2 years ago, there had been no progress. This time, they had also observed the fluctuations of the sacred relic. Unexpectedly, they even saw the back of the person who had stolen the sacred relic. This was considered a significant progress, but they still couldn't get the sacred relic back. If the other empires attack the Dragon Mist Empire, they can rightfully take over the sacred relic of our empire. Yi Ding was worried. Yin Nuoxing stood up, stretched, and drank a mouthful of tea. He smiled and said, Shall we go? Yi Ding smiled and nodded. After thinking for a while, he said, The Imperial Palace is a little complicated. If someone speaks rudely, please bear with it. Just treat it as if they're farting. Yin Nuoxing shrugged nonchalantly. They couldn't stand a little gossip. Looks like we have to suppress Brother Nuo. Yishi suddenly transmitted her voice. Xian and the others nodded in agreement. Only Little Star couldn't stand to hear bad things. Yin Nuoxing said, The Imperial Palace of the Dragon Mist Empire extended for several tens of miles and occupied half of the Dragon Mist City. There were groups of splendid palaces. The white of the palace was mixed with the golden sunlight, giving off a cold and stern feeling. It stood on the highest hillside of the Dragon Mist City. The high walls blocked everyone's path, as if they wanted everyone to look up at it. Wow, this is the Imperial Palace. It's much more magnificent than I imagined. Standing under the city wall, Yin Nuoxing looked up at the 10-meter-tall city wall. Even with his current eyesight, he still couldn't help but praise. He had seen more splendid palaces and groups of palaces in the Divine Sky City, but this was the first time he saw such a magnificent group of palaces. The Imperial Palace was indeed the Imperial Palace. Hearing the praise in Yun Nuoxing's voice, a trace of pride flashed across Yiding's eyes. The palace of the royal family was dominated by grandeur and strictness. He had originally thought that with the former's eyesight, he would not have taken a fancy to it. In fact, Yun Nuoxing only praised it because it was his first time seeing it. Yi Ding led Yun Nuoxing and the others towards the gate. When the two guards saw Yi Ding, they respectfully addressed him as Third Prince. Yun Nuoxing could feel a cold intent from them. These people were probably soldiers who had been on the battlefield and had been bathed in blood. He could even smell a trace of blood mixed in their aura. Passing through many halls and winding corridors, Yi Ding led Yun Nuoxing and the others out of the vast and magnificent imperial palace. When they arrived at a palace, they saw a group of people walking towards them. In this group, the men were handsome and the women were beautiful. Moreover, all of them had an extraordinary aura. They seemed to be very extraordinary. The group of people were chatting and laughing. When they saw Yi Ding's group walking towards them, that group of people were clearly startled. Immediately, with the exception of a lady, the rest of them bowed slightly and respectfully said, "Your Highness the Third Prince." The woman who didn't speak waved her hand slightly and said indifferently, "You can leave first." Yes. The group of people had a trace of respect between their brows and immediately walked in another direction. The strange atmosphere made Yun Nuoxing involuntarily open his evil spirit eye and look at the former and the others. The Third Prince has been missing for more than 2 years without any news. I thought he had fallen outside. This time, no one welcomed him back. I'm afraid he didn't find the sacred artifact. I wonder how the First Prince is doing. I'm afraid there's still no news. I'm afraid the dragon Mist Empire is going to change. Yun Nuoxing's expression was a little strange when he heard the voice that he had stolen in his mind. He glanced at Yi Ding before looking at the lady who was blocking the way. He raised his eyebrows. Were they going to quarrel? When the few people disappeared from sight, the woman finally moved. She slowly walked towards Yi Ding. No expression could be seen on her bright eyes and white teeth. When she was a foot away from Yi Ding, Yun Nuoxing took a deep breath and was ready to watch. However, what he saw next caused him to be taken aback. He saw the lady spread open her arms and fiercely threw herself into Yi Ding's embrace. Her extremely attached voice caused Yun Nuoxing and the rest to be dumbfounded. "Big brother, you're back." Yun Nuoxing and the others staggered and almost fell to the ground. They looked at Yi Ding, whose face was filled with happiness. What was going on? "Aren't I back now? Big brother will take you out to play in 2 days." Yi Ding tightly hugged the woman and smiled gently. Yun Nuoxing adjusted his non-existent glasses. He seemed to remember Yi Ding saying that his family of 7 brothers was very close. The scene in front of him made him suddenly think of Yuan Shi and his family. He also inexplicably thought of Yuan Xian. His cheeks trembled a few times. Cough. Yun Nuoxing, who finally couldn't stand the affection between the siblings, couldn't help but cough. When he turned around, he saw that Yuan Shi and Xian had avoided his gaze as if they didn't see him. This made him smile bitterly. Hearing this cough, Yi Ding and the woman blushed. The latter quickly broke free from Yi Ding's arms. Her blushing face was quite cute. Even her beautiful Mei Mao was flushed. Seeing that the girl had escaped, Yi Ding laughed dryly and scratched his head in embarrassment. When he turned around, he saw Yun Nuoxing's evil smile and shuddered. He hurriedly introduced, "Mr. Yun, this is my 6th sister, Yi Yun. You can call her Yun." Yun Nuoxing dragged his voice and smiled evilly. He pointed at Yi Yun, who was hiding shyly at the side. He then pointed at him and said with a smile, "Brother and sister love?" At this moment, Yun Nuoxing saw that the two's cheeks were so red that they could bleed. Chapter 471. In the spacious room, there was a faint fragrance of lilies. Yun Nuoxing and the others were casually sitting on the sofa. The teacup in front of the table had a pleasant fragrance of tea. From the time Yun brewed the tea to the moment she sat down, there was still a blush on her pretty face. Sitting beside Yi Ding, she seemed to be a little restless. Even Yi Ding was a little stunned. He glanced at Yi Yun from time to time, then looked at Yin Nuashing. In the end, he lowered his head and looked at the table, not knowing what to say. "Little star, you're making both of them feel very awkward," Xian said faintly. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment, then laughed bitterly. "Isn't that the case?" She could feel the affection from the two of them that surpassed the level of siblings. Could it be that they haven't exposed it yet? Moreover, they're siblings, right? "Why don't we go out for a while and let you guys talk privately before we talk about business?" Yin Nuashing smiled faintly as she looked at Yi Ding and Yi Yun, who seemed to be at a loss. Hearing this, Yi Ding quickly waved his hand and coughed. He suppressed the feelings in his heart and took a deep breath. He looked at Yi Yun and said, "Yin'er, his father." Yi Yun was startled by Yi Yun's words. Yi Yun was startled by these two sentences and was a little flustered. She raised her head, and her eyes, which were like works of art, were glued to Yi Ding's eyes. This made her calm down a little. She clenched her jade-like hands slightly and nodded. "Father is still healthy. It's just that he misses Big Brother a little and left without leaving any message. That day, Father almost turned Dragon Mist City upside down. When we were talking about you a few days ago, Father even said that if he were to catch you, he would definitely teach you a lesson." Seeing Yi Yun's fierce expression, Yi Ding laughed dryly. "I was a little anxious. Speaking of which, how old am I? Do I still need to be taught a lesson?" "Brother, you can talk to Father about this yourself." Yi Yun rolled her eyes and smiled mischievously. "Is there anything else? Where are Big Brother and the others?" Yi Ding asked again. "Big Brother and Second Brother came back from the Star Empire and the Ice Snow Empire a month ago. Big Sister and the others also came back from other places and met with Father. Now, only you haven't returned." Ian said softly. "Then, no, there's no news at all." Before Yi Ding could ask, Ian shook her head gently. They had not seen the sacred relic either. Hearing this, Yi Ding nodded. It seemed that he could confirm that the reaction he saw was indeed a holy object. The holy relic should still be in the Dragon Mist Empire. "I saw the back of that person today. His attire is very similar to the Empire's priests." "It might be him," Yi Ding said. "Brother, you saw him?" Yi Yun's delicate body trembled when she heard this. The seven of them had been searching for 3 years in the 8 great empires, but to no avail. Yi Ding, who was in charge of the Dragon Mist Empire, finally found some clues. "It shouldn't be wrong. I came back this time to borrow an item to confirm the location of the sacred object." Yi Ding nodded. "What?" Yin asked in confusion. "Heaven Void Ancient Mirror." Upon hearing this name, a scene surfaced in Yi Yun's mind. Within a sinister and frightening large hall, a mirror emitted a faint, cold glow. The little boy and little girl standing in front of it saw an inconceivable scene from within the mirror. "Brother, you want to enter the Forbidden Hall?" Yi Yun's little hand trembled slightly. There were many terrifying items stored in the Forbidden Hall. They were all cursed items that had been passed down from ancient times. They were kept in the Forbidden Hall as part of their heritage. Normally, no one would be allowed to come into contact with them. Only when the imperial family was in great trouble would they risk taking out these forbidden items. When they were young, they accidentally barged into the Forbidden Hall and saw the magical mirror, but they almost lost their lives there. If it was not for the priests of the imperial family who sensed that there was an accident and rushed to the Forbidden Hall, Yi Yun and Yi Ding would not exist in this world. There's no other way. If we keep dragging this out, we won't be able to delay the profound dragon ritual half a month later. At that time, the Dragon Mist Empire will not be able to withstand the pressure from the other 7 empires. Yi Ding sighed bitterly. The 8 great empires were all coveting each other. If the sacred object was lost, the profound dragon ritual would not be able to be held. It would undoubtedly give the other party a reason to start a war. "Let's talk to Father." Ian looked at Yi Ding worriedly. She still remembered the scene when she was young. It had become a shadow in her heart that could never be erased. Just the mention of that place made her a little scared. "All right." After hesitating for a while, Yi Ding nodded. Mei Mao nodded. Just as she stood up, she finally noticed Yin Nuashing and the others who had been listening quietly. Mei Mao paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "Brother, you haven't introduced the guest to me." "Yes." Yiding nodded and gestured to Yun Nuashing with his palm. He said, "This is Mr. Yun and his friends. They are all experts above the Empyrean realm." Empyrean realm. Hearing this, Yin could not help but cover her half-open mouth with her hand. She seemed to be extremely shocked. It was not that there were no Empyrean realm experts in the Empire. Every empire had many Empyrean realm experts. However, 5 Empyrean realm experts appeared at once. She was not mentally prepared and was shocked. "My name is Yun Nuashing. Don't call me Mr. It sounds awkward. You can learn from this girl, or just call me Nuashing." Yun Nuashing waved his hand dismissively. The word Mr. sounded quite awkward to him. As for the girl he was referring to, of course, he was referring to Qin Yan. Qin Yan's gaze flickered with a hint of bitterness. The Imperial Palace values one's status very much. This way of addressing can save a lot of trouble. However, if young Master Yin likes it, then we can address each other as such in private. Yiding smiled slightly. Yin Nuashing nodded. Yin looked at the two of them from the side. Her eyes kept darting around. She was a little curious about where Yiding found these martial experts. "Does young Master Yin want to come with us?" Yiding asked softly. "The Imperial Palace is an important place. We outsiders can't find a reason to enter. I think it's better if we don't meet your father. As for other troubles, that's another matter. Just call us if you have any problems." Yin Nuashing shook his head. Since the Imperial Palace was hidden in a place like the Forbidden Grounds, outsiders would definitely not be allowed to enter. If Yi Ding recommended outsiders to meet his father and asked to enter the Forbidden Grounds, it would cause more trouble, especially for outsiders like them who are not under the Imperial Palace's control. Yi Ding also thought of this, so he did not insist. He nodded and said, "Young Master Yin, please wait for us here for a while. We'll be back soon." After that, he took Yi Yun's hand and walked out of the room, gently closing the door behind them. He took a sip of tea and merged his spiritual strength into the void. When he sensed that the two of them had left, he slammed the teacup on the table and stood up abruptly, giving Xian and the rest a fright. Then, in the air, a speck of blue quietly condensing into a 2-meter-long blue needle. Seeing Ling Hongjian appear, Xian and the rest looked at Yun Nuashing in confusion. Was he trying to tear down the Imperial Palace? Yun Nuashing grinned and swept his right hand in front of him. A dazzling faint purple light flickered first, then turned into a wave of fire that spiraled in the room. Even though Yun Nuashing had already suppressed the temperature, the walls of the room were still dyed black. Holding the purple night flame in his right hand, he took a deep breath and pressed it into Ling Hongjian. Then, the silver-blue needle was dyed a faint purple at a visible speed. Ling Hongjian could merge with all objects and obtain their characteristics, increasing their strength. When Ling Hongjian had completely turned pale purple, the spiritual force between Yun Nuashing's eyebrows suddenly rushed out and poured into Ling Hongjian. Then, from the latter's body, an extremely terrifying spiritual probing power burst out and spread out far and wide with a speed that far surpassed the speed of light. Everyone who was swept by this spiritual force felt as if they were being probed by something. However, this feeling also disappeared in an instant, causing people to wonder if it was an illusion. The soul power that spread out rushed out of the Dragon Mist Empire in just an instant. It spread out toward the outside of the Dragon Mist Empire, the ground, the sky, and even the void space. Everything that it sensed was converted into information and stored in its mind. From an ant to a fierce battle, it was all sensed by Lin Li. In less than 2 seconds, Yun Nuashing's eyebrows twitched, and he abruptly cut off the output of his spiritual strength, withdrawing that frantically spreading spiritual strength. His face was slightly pale, and he lost control of his body for a moment. He directly sat on the sofa and kept gasping for breath. 2 drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. To Xian and the others, they only took a sip of tea when they saw Yun Nuashing suddenly stand up and then powerlessly sit down. Seeing his pale face, Xian was also a bit startled. She quickly placed her lily-white hand on his forehead and gently sent her spiritual strength into his palm. With just a glance, Mei Mao flickered a few times. "Little star?" Why did your spiritual strength run out? Xian looked at Yin Nuoxing in confusion. It had only been 2 seconds. How could his huge spiritual strength, comparable to that of a demon-rank powerhouse, suddenly disappear? Thinking of Yin Nuoxing's actions, Yuan Shi guessed something. He patted the former's shoulder and advised, "Buddy, don't play with your life all the time." Yin Nuoxing powerlessly rolled his eyes. "Why does it sound like I'm playing with my life all the time? I'm just using the purple night flame and high spirit sword to enhance my spiritual strength. With the two of them, the consumption of spiritual strength is bound to be terrifying. With my current spiritual strength, 2 seconds is the limit. The range of my spiritual strength should include a few empires. Although I saw a lot, I didn't sense any fluctuations of the divine flame. But I also unexpectedly saw a lot of interesting places. Well, they're all worth taking a look. How about I say, I want to take a look?" Her soul power turned into a warm stream that slowly flowed into Yun Nuoxing's mind through her jade-like hand. Yin listened to him talk as if nothing had happened and couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. This guy never cared about himself and always made others worry about him. If it weren't for the fact that Yun Nuoxing had so many friends by his side, perhaps one day he would suddenly die in the wilderness and no one would know. Xian's lily-white hand was gently patted. She raised her head and saw Yun Nuoxing gently smiling at her. She couldn't help but snort softly. She glanced at him and turned her gaze away, causing Yun Nuoxing to bitterly smile. When did this girl learn to be so arrogant? After Yun Nuoxing finished speaking, he let out a light breath and closed his eyes to recover the huge amount of spiritual strength he had consumed. Yuan Shi and the others saw a trace of fatigue between his brows. His eyes were tightly shut, as if he had fallen asleep. They also sat down quietly. Even Yi Shi didn't bother him. She quietly released a few strands of spiritual strength and vigilantly scanned the surroundings. The room suddenly quieted down, and only the sound of everyone's breathing could be heard. A long while later, when the sun had set and the sky seemed to have been lit up by the sun, the door to the room was once again pushed open by someone. The moment the door moved, Yin Nuoxing and the rest opened their eyes in unison and looked towards the door. When they saw the Yi Ding duo appear, their faces were slightly gloomy. They had already guessed a little of what had happened. "How is it?" Although Yin Nuoxing guessed it, she still asked habitually. Yi Ding sighed and shook his head. His father insisted on not opening the forbidden hall, leaving him with no choice. Even if his big brother and the others agreed with his idea, they couldn't change his father's opinion. Seeing his actions, Yin Nuoxing nodded. She looked at the fiery red sun outside the window and smiled faintly. "Let's wait for it to get dark." Chapter 472. Darkness gradually covered the entire city. A few wisps of clouds drifted and formed a curtain that covered the sky, blocking the cool moonlight and causing the world to be a little dim. However, before the world was completely dark, there were spots of light that quietly lit up in the city, becoming one of the few embellishments in this curtain. Although there were not many of them, they were densely packed in a few areas. While the entire city fell into silence, it also revealed a natural vitality. It was as if night had fallen and a giant was lying on the ground to rest. At the highest point of this giant, a group of buildings that had completely turned black were emitting a cold aura that repelled people thousands of miles away, but also a little majestic. The cold giant seemed to set off the tranquility of the night. The entire palace was dead silent. Even the troops that were usually patrolling had disappeared without a trace. It was as if they had discussed and agreed to disappear at the same time. In the quiet night, an extremely soft sound of wind breaking suddenly rang out in the sky. It was a very soft sound, much softer than the sound of birds flying across the sky. Not long before the sound of wind breaking rang out, on the top of a building above the cold and cheerless palace, a spot of darkness suddenly wriggled slightly. The wriggling darkness completely merged with the surrounding darkness. If one did not observe very carefully, one would not be able to tell that the hidden shadow was actually one or a few figures. After the darkness wriggled slightly, a few figures suddenly flew out from that spot. One after another, they leaped into the night sky and landed on the top of the palace. In just a few minutes, they had flipped over a dozen palaces. The entire process was very smooth, and there was not the slightest sound, as if they had done this for a long time. In reality, other than the person in the lead, when the others landed, there would be more or less a slight sound. It was very loud in the night sky, but it was difficult to attract anyone's attention. A few minutes later, after the person in the lead landed on the top of the palace, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and gently waved his hand behind him. After that, a deliberately suppressed voice quietly sounded. "That black palace is the Forbidden Palace. To be honest, I don't know if I will be able to come out after entering it." When the few people beside him heard this, they turned their heads with strange expressions. However, the few of them were covered by the shadows and could not see what the expression on his face was. They only felt that it should be a sinister smile. Doesn't the Forbidden Hall need to be defended? Yin Nuoxing looked at Yi Ding, who was behind her, with a strange expression. There wasn't a single person in the vicinity. Could it be that he was so assured that no one would be bored enough to come to the Forbidden Hall? Was that why he had dismissed the guards? For someone who has designs on the Forbidden Hall, no matter how many guards we send, it will be useless. Moreover, the Forbidden Hall doesn't recognize anyone. Who knows if there will be any adverse effects if we send people there? Yiding said softly. There was one more thing he didn't say, but he felt that it wasn't a problem if he didn't say it. There were originally some guards here, but for some reason, they weren't here. Yin Nuoxing was speechless and nodded. The things stored in the Forbidden Hall were things that even the imperial family didn't want to come into contact with. However, they had no choice but to seal them up. Who would run in for no reason and be tormented by a strange forbidden weapon? If there was an expert who wanted to snatch the forbidden weapon, those guards would only be cannon fodder. In that case, it was better not to set up any defenses. She was still worried and used her soul to sense again. After confirming that she didn't sense anyone else's aura, she felt relieved and carried everyone up. The moonlight pierced through the clouds and slightly illuminated the few figures that were flying through the air, illuminating them as they approached the Black Palace. At the entrance of the Black Forbidden Hall, Yin Nuoxing had just landed with a few people when a strange chill rose from the bottom of his feet. Then, it quickly pierced his brain, causing his entire body to shiver. The nether void sword almost subconsciously floated from behind him to in front of him. Even the little phoenix was startled by his big movement. After slightly calming himself down, Yin Nuoxing finally put away the trace of relief in his heart. To be honest, ever since he came to this small world, he knew that the people here were generally weaker than the people in the God Realm, so he had an extremely faint trace of contempt in his heart. However, he was too lazy to say anything, and he believed that he was not the only one who felt this way. However, at this moment, when he landed, he suddenly shuddered, and his expression became a little strange. In this small world, there was actually something that he had to treat seriously. Looks like there's something not simple inside. Yin Nuoxing turned his head to look at Yiding. Yin Nuoxing suddenly became serious. That change didn't escape Yiding's eyes. His expression also became slightly serious. He nodded and said, "There are many forbidden weapons that have been passed down from ancient times in the Forbidden Hall. Or perhaps they were left behind by our ancestors. There are many that even Imperial Father doesn't want to touch." Yin Nuoxing's expression was calm. He glanced at the tightly shut door of the Forbidden Hall and thought for a moment. Then his gaze shifted to the two huge pillars behind them. He suddenly said, "The people behind those pillars, 1, 2, 3, 5 people, if you have nothing to do, come out. I can't guarantee your safety if you continue to sneak behind us." Hearing this, Yi Ding and the others were startled. Immediately, their bodies trembled. They hurriedly turned around and looked at the two huge pillars. They were a little panicked. He didn't feel anything. However, he couldn't be blamed for being so frightened. Even Yuan Shi and the others turned their heads in astonishment. Yin Nuoxing possessed the wood element and could easily sense the life force. Even people who were good at concealment would find it difficult to completely restrict their life force fluctuations. Therefore, when the latter said that she had discovered someone, there really was someone. After Yin Nuoxing's voice fell, a slight rustling sound of clothes rubbing against each other sounded from behind the huge pillars. The few people were also a little surprised. It might be a coincidence that she said they were hiding here, but if she even accurately said the number of people, it would be a little exaggerated. It was also because of this that the few people realized that Yin Nuoxing wasn't joking. They looked at each other and nodded their heads. They slowly walked out from behind the pillars. The moonlight poured down, illuminating 5 rather beautiful faces. When Yi Ding and Yin saw this, they were stunned. You have good senses. With such senses, you're at least a martial expert. No wonder you dared to barge into the Forbidden Hall at night. However, this is the palace. 100,000 Imperial guards are hidden in every corner of the palace. As long as you give the order. The young man who walked out first glanced coldly at Yin Nuoxing and the others. Then, he looked at Yi Ding and Yi Yan. A hint of nervousness flashed in his eyes. Finally, he looked at Yin Nuoxing. His low voice caused the latter to be slightly stunned. Then, she rolled her eyes. Did this guy think that she was holding Yi Ding hostage? After hearing this, Yi Ding blinked in astonishment. When he saw that Yin Nuoxing was about to speak, he laughed bitterly and hurriedly took 2 steps forward. He stood in front of Yin Nuoxing and said helplessly, "Big brother, why are you here?" Yin Nuoxing, who was about to speak, frowned slightly when she saw Yi Ding standing in front of her. Before she could push Yi Ding aside, she heard this and was instantly stunned. Big brother? Could it be the first prince, Yi Daofeng? Today, when I heard you say to father that you wanted to enter the Forbidden Hall, I guessed that you would make a move tonight. However, I didn't expect you to be held hostage. Tell me, what are your conditions? The first prince frowned slightly. His last sentence was naturally directed at Yin Nuoxing. There was a hint of anger in his voice. This was the first time he had seen someone who dared to hold his brother hostage. Big brother! Hearing the anger in the first prince's voice, Yi Ding immediately became nervous. He carefully glanced at Yin Nuoxing and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the latter didn't show any special reaction. He hurriedly ran toward the first prince and the others, who were somewhat astonished. Then, he quickly told them that he had brought Yin Nuoxing here. If he didn't stop them now, he was afraid that a fight would break out. After hearing Yi Ding's words, the first prince and the others' expressions changed a few times. They only regained their senses after a while and looked at Yin Nuoxing strangely. This fellow looks like she's only 16 or 17 years old. Is she an Empyrean expert? However, they still trusted Yi Ding very much. Hence, they didn't hesitate for long. The first prince sighed and cupped his fists. I see. This one has been rude. Brother Yin, please don't take it to heart. Yin Nuoxing looked at him in surprise. He thought that he would have to pester them for a while before he would let them go. However, it only took 10 seconds for his face to change from anger to calmness. Moreover, he actually chose to believe Yi Ding's words. It seemed like the latter was right. Their family of 7 brothers had a very good relationship. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and said, I have my reasons for helping you find the sacred relic. If you don't help us, we can't do anything about it. The fact that the sacrificial fire could be the Yin spirit fire was enough for Yin Nuoxing to put in all his effort to find it. The 8th sacred relic of the 8 great empires could be used to open a hidden space. As for whether the strongest experts of the 8 great empires knew that this world was only a small one, it wasn't clear. Yu Chun had said that there were quite a few people who knew the truth of this world. I understand. If Brother Yun can really find the sacred relic, the Yi family will definitely do our best to help. We will also let Brother Yun and the others see the sacrificial fire on the day of the profound dragon ritual. The first prince nodded and said without hesitation. He wasn't naive enough to think that any heaven-rank expert would be so free as to help them find the sacred relic. All of this was an agreement made for their own benefit. Yin Nuoxing nodded and turned around. However, he suddenly saw that the tightly shut doors of the Forbidden Hall had actually opened. The gloomy cold wind swept past his cheeks with a strange emotion, causing Yin Nuoxing to shiver. That chill didn't come from his body, it made his soul tremble. A chill that can affect the soul? It can't be a divine weapon, right? Yin Nuoxing rubbed his slightly warm palms. This was an instinctive reaction that allowed him to sense the existence of danger. He had only had such a strong reaction when facing the Forbidden Hall. He had never felt such a strong chill at other times. Brother Nuo, hurry up, there's something good here. Yishi's voice came out with some echoes. It seemed that even in a very spacious Forbidden Hall, there was still some joy in her voice. A spacious Forbidden Hall? Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned. He lowered his head, and Yishi's petite figure disappeared. When he thought of the echoes just now, his face turned slightly pale. You bastard! Yin Nuoxing screamed in horror. The Nether Void Sword and Ling Hong's sword responded to his call and followed Yin Nuoxing into the Forbidden Hall. The echoes of Dian Dian's heavy footsteps resounded. Xian, Yi Ding, and the others only saw 3 flashes of light rush into the Forbidden Hall. They looked at each other and also rushed in with a scream. That was the Forbidden Hall. He stomped heavily on the pitch-black floor. The weak moonlight no longer allowed him to see the scene inside. He frowned and released his soul power, illuminating the Forbidden Hall. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew in his face, causing him to quickly stop. He turned his gaze fiercely and looked at the high platform in front of him. Ghost mask. What appeared in his line of sight was a red mask. 2 curved horns protruded from the forehead. The fiendish appearance coupled with the fiery eyes gave Yin Nuoxing a fright. He unnaturally took a step back. Yi Ding, who had hurriedly caught up, saw Yin Nuoxing standing in front of the mask. He also took a deep breath and said hastily, "That's a mask collected from the war-torn land. The person who wore it would be as if he was possessed by a ghost and would be in an invincible position. However, without exception, every person who wore it had gone crazy. It seemed that their minds had been damaged." Yin Nuoxing glanced at it and was slightly surprised. His mental energy had unexpectedly drifted uncontrollably toward the mask. However, he also understood that this mask would absorb the mental energy of the person who wore it. Those who didn't cultivate mental energy would be quickly sucked dry and even have their brains damaged. To the people of the mysterious dragon continent who didn't cultivate mental energy, this was undoubtedly a god-level item. He still couldn't find its source. Brother Nuo, hurry up, there's something good downstairs. Just as Yin Nuoxing was about to study it, he saw a petite figure waving her hand vigorously under the faint light in the distance. Her porcelain-like, delicate little face couldn't conceal the excitement. When she saw Yin Nuoxing looking over, she grinned and hurriedly ran down the stairs. My little ancestor. Chapter 473. The spiraling stone staircase was dyed a little red. The first that was drawn on the first step, and then it slowly extended to the bottom of the staircase, like a stream of water slowly flowing down. At the bottom of the stone staircase, which was less than a meter wide, was a deep and dark hole. There was no handrail, and one had to stick close to the wall as they walked. If one stretched their neck and looked down, it was as if they were staring into an abyss. One could feel a gaze shooting up from below. On this precipitous flight of stairs, one should have been slowly walking while holding onto the wall to seek comfort in one's heart. However, there was a group of people who were frantically running down with all their might. There was even a youth who jumped over the huge hole at the bottom and landed directly on the stairs at the bottom. Then, he chased down with all his might. Xiaoxi, wait for me. The youth took a deep breath and looked at the little girl who was happily jumping up and down in front of him. Her head of wine-red hair swayed freely, and 4 strands of hair were blown behind her back. Gusts of chilly wind blew against her dress, causing the youth to be a little dazed. Although she was a little mischievous, she rarely dragged them along like this. Furthermore, this was the Forbidden Hall that stored countless strange and bizarre items. Thinking of this, Yin Nuoxing shuddered and suddenly stopped in his tracks. He took a deep breath and shouted loudly, Yishi! Yishi was startled by this stern shout, and her jumping figure suddenly stopped. Her crystalline eyes revealed a hint of grievance. She turned around and looked at Yin Nuoxing, who was running over quickly. She lowered her head unhappily like a child who had done something wrong. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly when he saw the grievance in her eyes. He had never drunk Yi Shi and the others before. The little girl was probably going to throw a tantrum for a while. However, seeing that she had stopped, the anxiety in his heart naturally disappeared. He thought that something was controlling Yi Shi. Without saying anything, Yin Nuoxing took 2 steps forward and pulled her into her arms with her right hand. She hugged that small and delicate body with both hands and slowed down even more. Since Yi Shi was fine, she must have her reasons for dragging her down. Then, Yin Nuoxing had to speed up. Yi Ding and the others quickly caught up from behind. Seeing him speed up a lot, Yi Shi curled her lips, and the trace of grievance in her heart quietly disappeared. She leaned her little head next to the former's ear and whispered, "Brother-in-law, there's someone down there. Hurry." When Yin Nuoxing heard this, she broke out in a cold sweat. However, she did not ask any further questions. She nodded and leaped down the stairs. When the people behind them saw this, they also took a deep breath and followed the 2 of them. They did not know how many floors they had jumped, but they continued to jump down without stopping. For a moment, only a dozen or so footsteps could be heard in the empty spiral staircase. When their feet landed on the ground of the last step, the spiritual light illuminated the things around them. The bronze floor was sparkling and translucent, reflecting Yin Nuoxing's serious face. What appeared in front of them was a huge passageway. The walls were all made of bronze. At the same time, Yin Nuoxing's nose twitched slightly, and her frown deepened. The aura of life. It's very faint. The person has not left for long. Someone really came in. Yi Ding, Yi Daofeng, and the others frowned as well. Even though the forbidden hall wasn't guarded, because almost no one would barge in, it didn't mean that this place wasn't important. This was a forbidden area of the Imperial Palace. Since that person was able to barge in without a sound, then it might not be difficult for him to sneak into the Imperial Palace. Yin Nuoxing's gaze paused. She sensed that something was wrong. How could there be such a coincidence? They were about to come to the forbidden hall, but they realized that someone had already come. "Let's go." However, there was no time to think about it now. She waved her hand and rushed into the bronze passageway. Xian and the others also quickly followed. Yi Daofeng wanted to say something, but when he saw that Yin Nuoxing was even more anxious than him, he forgot what to say and could only follow them into the passageway. The rushing figures suddenly stopped at a fork in the road. Xian and the others did not have time to slow down and almost crashed into them. They quickly stopped and looked at the few paths in front of them. They turned around in shock and looked at Yi Ding and the others. The underground of the Forbidden Hall is a maze. Yi Ding, who had finally caught up, took a deep breath and shook his head. "When I first entered the Forbidden Hall, I didn't see this underground maze, and the Heaven Void ancient mirror was placed there. However, I didn't see the mirror just now. It might have been moved here." Seeing that he was frowning slightly and did not seem to be lying, Yin Nuoxing sighed and muttered, "Why would it be moved for no reason? Almost no one visits the Forbidden Hall." When Yi Ding heard this, he smiled bitterly. The eldest prince, Yi Daofeng, had just opened his mouth. Before he could say the first syllable, Yin Nuoxing and the others rushed into the passageway at lightning speed. They were stunned for a moment. The corner of Yi Daofeng's mouth twitched slightly. However, when he heard Yi Ding say that these people might be heaven-rank experts, he did not dare to flare up. He could only swallow his anger. "Brother, what do you want to say? I'll help you say it," Yi Ding said as he pulled everyone into the bronze passageway. He wanted to speak a few times, but before he could say anything, Yin Nuoxing had already disappeared. He was always one step behind. Yi Daofeng was silent for a while. He looked up at the dark passageway in front of him and shook his head. He said helplessly, "I forgot what I wanted to say." Everyone, a few minutes later, they reached the end of the long passageway. Yi Ding and the others rushed out and arrived at a huge circular platform. They did not know where the passageways led to. Yin Nuoxing and the others were standing at the center. The latter had her eyes closed. A strange energy surrounded her body, causing their expressions to change slightly. "Brother, that person, Mr. Yun's energy is very strange. I have never seen such a dazzling energy. Yin pulled Yi Ding's arm and said softly, "There are no records in the ancient books about who has such a dazzling energy on the mystic dragon continent." At this time, the second prince also said softly. Yi Ding waved his hand, indicating for them not to say anything. He hurried to Yun Nuoxing's side and said softly, "Mr. Yun, the aura of life has been cut off." Yun Nuoxing turned around and glanced at him. She said, "The aura of life disappeared when we reached this place. Moreover, it was erased by someone. Someone must have done it on purpose to lure us here." Yi Ding tilted his head. He did not have the wood element. Naturally, he was not as sensitive to life as Yun Nuoxing. Even at the entrance of the bronze passageway, he did not feel any aura. "Do you have a map of this maze?" Yun Nuoxing looked at Yi Ding and the others and asked. Yi Ding was slightly stunned. He turned around and looked at Yi Daofeng and the others. However, he saw them looking at each other. Then, they shook their heads vigorously. They had never been to this place. Even if they had been here before, the map would not be in their hands. Most likely, only their father would have the map. Seeing this, Yun Nuoxing frowned slightly. She looked at Xian and the others and blinked her eyes. She meant, "Do you have any ideas?" Xian, Yuan Shi, and Yi Shi understood. After thinking for a while, Yi Shi said telepathically, "Just smash it." Yun Nuoxing was speechless. Xian and Yuan Shi's suggestion was more reasonable. If they walked along the wall, they would reach the end of the maze. Although this suggestion was not bad, it was too time-consuming. Yuan Shi curled his hands beside his body and flapped them, hinting at his wings. Yun Nuoxing looked at Yi Ding and the others strangely. The 6 demonic wings could increase his soul power, spiritual power, and energy by 12 times. It allowed him to sense energy in a wider range. However, he did not know what the others would think if he used it. However, he dismissed this idea after a while. Who cared what they thought? He felt that something was wrong. If he did not hurry over, the void sky ancient mirror might be gone. He did not know why he felt this way. Just as he had said, this was a kind of intuition that came from nowhere. Looking at Yuan Shi, Yun Nuoxing nodded. With a thought, a purple light flashed in his eyes. Behind him, 6 light purple wings that were 30 meters wide slowly unfolded. As the 6 wings unfolded, a fierce wind suddenly appeared. It whistled through the many passages on the round platform, creating a terrifying whistling sound. Wings! The fierce wind lifted the robes of Yi Ding and the others. They hurriedly pressed them down. When they steadied themselves, they saw the 6 magnificent wings unfold, almost covering the entire round platform. They immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this a human or a demon king? When they looked at Yun Nuoxing's handsome face and saw that his expression was slightly gloomy, they became even more certain that Yi Ding had invited a demon king back. At this time, Yun Nuoxing did not have time to care about what they were thinking. The 12-fold amplification allowed him to capture an extremely faint trace of life aura that had not been completely eliminated. This made him smile faintly. The person who had eliminated the traces would not have a very high realm. They were much weaker than him, which was why he was able to detect it. Although he was a little surprised that there were also immortal step experts in this small world, he was not very worried. He had 2 people who were close to demonic step by his side, and he himself was also a strange person. After clearly capturing that trace of life aura, Yun Nuoxing did not delay any longer. He also did not care about the shocked gazes of Yi Ding and the others. The golden chains shot out from the internal space of the trench coat and directly entangled the latter and the others. With a stomp of his feet on the ground, he brought the crowd and charged into the tunnel with the life aura. At one of the maze's exits, the space behind the exit was extremely wide. A pillar abruptly rose from the ground. It was at least 40 feet tall, and at the top of the pillar, an ancient bronze mirror was suspended 1 foot above the pillar. It emitted a strange energy fluctuation, a bit like the spatial fluctuation of the realm of the gods. There was another strand of energy entangled around the ancient mirror. Judging from its fluctuation, it seemed to want to refine the ancient mirror. However, The ancient mirror's own energy blocked the advance of that strand of energy. For a moment, it was entangled, and it was difficult to advance or retreat. At the bottom of the pillar, an old man with white hair and a beard sat cross-legged. Even his eyebrows were empty, but his body emitted an extraordinary aura. He was probably an old monster who had lived for many years. Strands of energy were transmitted from his body and entangled with the ancient mirror above. It seemed that this person wanted to refine the ancient mirror. 5 meters behind the old man, there were 20 or so people who were pacing back and forth. Their eyes were nervously looking at the ancient mirror and the white-robed figure standing at the front. They were slightly anxious. In this group, there were a dozen or so young people who were slightly anxious. Another middle-aged man was much calmer, but his eyes were still fixed on the mirror. The slight movement of his fingertips showed that his heart was not calm. Luo, are you sure that the ancient mirror and the sacred object can open a passage to another world? After a while, a man from the group of middle-aged men took 2 steps forward and asked softly to the white-robed woman who wore a grand crown on her head. This group of people was very powerful. They had already come into contact with the core of this world. They knew that this world was only a miniature world created by humans. Master Luo is 80% sure that as long as we have the ancient mirror and the sacred object, we can open a passage to the divine city. We have been preparing for this for 10 years. The woman called Luo turned around and looked at the middle-aged man who had walked forward. Mei Mao's eyes were calm and gentle as she nodded. If Yin Nuoxing was here, he would be able to recognize this woman. She was the person he had almost buried in the valley. Just as he said, this woman would not die so easily. The fire of sacrifice may lead people to another world. In the Forbidden Zone, there are rumors that there are strange passages that can send people to strange places. Therefore, there may be other ways to go to the divine city. If Junior Sister's guess is wrong, we can mess up this year's ritual of the profound dragon and use the sacred object to open the sky. We can also go to the divine city. A young man on the side said with a smile, "Yes, we old guys have been waiting for this day for a long time." Luo's master sighed softly and nodded. However, he sighed again and said, "We don't have much to worry about. The main thing is to send you all out. You are all very talented and can't be confined here. Master, we agreed to go out together. You can't go back on your words." Hearing this, another young man on the side muttered unhappily. This made the middle-aged man chuckle and shake his head. That's right, they also wanted to go out and see the real world. Luo smiled sweetly. Just as she was about to say something, her beautiful face suddenly changed and became very calm. She looked at the bronze passage behind them and said indifferently, "Someone is coming." When everyone heard this, their expressions changed slightly. The moment he finished speaking, an extremely terrifying sonic boom suddenly resounded through the entire labyrinth, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. It was as if a primordial beast had come from behind. Chapter 474. Boom! A terrifying explosion came from behind them. Luo, and the others immediately looked at the entrance. A golden light flashed by, and a dozen figures appeared. 6 light purple wings spread out, each of them about 30 meters wide. A terrifying wind element swept through the space, causing everyone's chest to feel a little stuffy. Along with the storm came a terrifying pressure. It was like a giant hand had slapped Luo, and the others, causing them to fly back a few meters. They landed in front of the old man who had his eyes closed. Their expressions were somewhat grave. So that's how it is. I guess right after all, the sacred object, the virtual sky, ancient mirror, and the outside world. Interesting. The person who had spoken was the first prince, Yi Daofeng. The strong wind caused his robes to flap loudly. Although they had been flying at a high speed, perhaps because the echoes in the passageway were too loud or for some other reason, they had all heard the conversation of the 20 or so people at the end of the passageway. They instantly understood everything. My dragon mist empire has treated you well. Why did you steal the sacred object? Yi Daofeng shouted sternly. Losing the sacred object in front of the 8 great empires during the profound dragon ritual was not only a simple matter of not being able to trigger the heavenly fire, but also a loss of the empire's reputation. Mei Mao glanced at him indifferently and shook her head, but she did not say anything. No matter what treatment they received, it could not compare to the temptation of going to a new world. Yin Nuoxing's brows twitched. Yu Chen had told him that the strongest in this small world also knew about the realm of the gods. Many people want to go there. On the profound dragon continent, the realm of the gods was called God City. To the people here, it was very mysterious. The 6 wings flapped, and a gale gently lowered Yin Nuoxing and the others to the ground. The 6 wings folded behind his back like a screen. Yin Nuoxing raised his head and looked at the mirror at the highest point of the pillar. He said softly, "That is the virtual sky, ancient mirror. There are spatial fluctuations from the realm of the gods. I'm afraid it's an artifact from the realm of the gods. There are demon-grade energy fluctuations." Yuan Shi transmitted. Yin Nuoxing lightly nodded. He also felt a very familiar spatial fluctuation coming from the ancient mirror. Perhaps it was just as those people had said. With the void heaven ancient mirror and the sacred artifact, they could go to the myriad god realm from the profound dragon continent. "Are you okay?" "Thank goodness." Yin Nuoxing's gaze immediately locked onto the white-robed woman who was surrounded by people. She immediately recognized her. After confirming that she was fine, she heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. Seeing this, everyone's expression became a little strange, especially Luo. This guy had destroyed the entire valley with a single sword strike, almost burying her underneath. If it weren't for the space talisman given to her by her master, she really would have died there. Seeing him appear here, her expression immediately turned cold. Seeing him heave a sigh of relief now, Mei Mao was also a little confused. She didn't know what this person was thinking, but there was a hint of coldness in his expression. Seeing that everyone was on guard, Yin Nuoxing acted as if he didn't see them and walked straight toward the woman. Luo Er's master saw this and frowned slightly. He took a step forward and shouted softly. A terrifying force flew toward Yin Nuoxing. However, this force directly swept over the ladder, and her footsteps didn't even move in the slightest. Seeing this, everyone's expression became a little stiff. The woman's master's expression even stiffened. As an Empyrean expert, his roar could directly send a martial or law immortal expert flying. However, Yin Nuoxing was completely unaffected. Everyone knew very well what this meant to them. This guy is also an Empyrean expert. This kid isn't even 18 yet, right? An Empyrean expert. Seeing this scene, the group of young people all sucked in a breath of cold air. This group of people was extremely talented. In their 20s, they were already at the soul realm. However, they saw someone younger than them who had the same strength as their master. This made them doubt their own talents for the first time, and whether or not they could be considered as good in front of this person. Yi Ding and Yi Yun, on the other hand, were very calm because they already knew about it. But now they were a little shocked. There were actually more than a dozen Sky Realm experts here, and they were all from the Dragon Mist Empire and other big empires. They seemed to have joined forces long ago. Yin Nuoxing continued forward a few steps and stopped 10 meters in front of the crowd. Seeing that another woman wanted to stop him, he couldn't help but sigh softly and said, "All right, don't fight. You can't hurt me. I don't have any hostility. I just want something from you." "Impossible." Before anyone could speak, Luo frowned and suddenly took a step forward. She shouted sternly, "The holy artifact and the ancient void mirror will not be given to you." That was the result of 10 years of painstaking planning. It wasn't easy to snatch it from the Dragon Mist Empire. How could they give it back so easily? "You really won't give it to me?" Yin Nuoxing narrowed his eyes. "Little brat, it's too early for you to snatch things from us." A man who was 10 feet tall shouted and stomped his foot on the ground. His whole body rushed towards Yin Nuoxing like a cannonball. He clenched his wash-basin-sized fist, and with an ear-piercing sound, the dust on the ground was blown away. He fiercely smashed his fist towards Yin Nuoxing's face. "Mr. Yun, Seeing that this powerful attack was almost in front of Yin Nuoxing in an instant, Yi Ding's face turned pale. Just as he was about to warn them, he saw that Xian and the others were indifferent. It was as if they didn't care at all. His heart inexplicably calmed down. Bang! Just as his voice fell, a dull sound of flesh colliding rang out. The dull sound caused the young people to shrink their necks. This martial uncle was also a valiant person. He rushed up and blasted the person's life, not holding back at all. That boy is also a sky rank master, but he didn't even dodge. He's too conceited. A young man crossed his arms in front of his chest. He was very dissatisfied with Yin Nuoxing's behavior. He thought that he was underestimating the enemy. He can raise the Sword Peak Valley to the ground with a sword. Naturally, he has the ability to not dodge. Luo was very calm. She was completely different from the excitement. Just now, it was as if she had changed her expression. Her indifferent words shocked everyone. The Sword Peak Valley was razed to the ground by a peerless master. Basically, everyone in the Dragon Mist Empire received the news immediately. They didn't think that it was done by this guy. When Luo's master heard this, his face twitched unnaturally. He laughed dryly and said, "Where did this guy come from? Why haven't I heard of such a young sky rank master?" His old friends at the side all shook their heads. They didn't know either. They had never heard of this person's name. Logically speaking, such a powerful person definitely wouldn't be unknown. He should be very famous. However, in reality, they had never seen or heard of this person before. After a while, the dust dissipated. Although everyone had expected this, they couldn't help but gulp when they saw it. The basin-sized fist directly imprinted on Yin Nuoxing's face. However, the latter didn't even take a step back. Instead, the ground in front of the burly man collapsed a few inches. This is going to be a big mess. Everyone suddenly smiled bitterly. Could this be fate? The burly man's all-out attack couldn't even make Yin Nuoxing take a step back. They were afraid that even if more than a dozen sky rank masters attacked together, they might not be able to capture Yin Nuoxing. The burly man's reaction was even greater. His face turned extremely dark, as if he had eaten a dead fly. Only he knew that the power contained in his punch was completely dissolved by a strange force when it came into contact with Yin Nuoxing. It didn't even touch his face. After his attack failed, the burly man cursed and quickly retreated. He looked at Yin Nuoxing's purple-gold eyes. It was as if he was being stared at by a wild beast. It made his hair stand on end. Suddenly, a low gasp of surprise came from behind. The white-robed woman turned her head and saw the old man who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, refining the void sky, ancient mirror. She raised her head in surprise, and there was a hint of confusion in her eyes. "Brother Nuo, I've got the mirror." Everyone raised their heads in surprise and saw a little girl around 10 years old with a head of wine-red hair. She was happily holding a mirror that was bigger than her in her arms and holding it in front of Yin Nuoxing. Luo's master's expression changed when he saw that the mirror had been taken away during the chaos. He gritted his teeth and was about to rush out when he was shocked to see that Yin Nuoxing had only taken a glance at the mirror in her hand. She then turned around and threw it at Luo. She said softly, "I'll return it to you." The moment the mirror left Yin Nuoxing's hand, no one saw a silver-blue light quietly shrink back into Yin Nuoxing's hand. Everyone only saw the mirror fly through the air like a frisbee, and then it landed steadily in Luo's hand. What the hell was this? Everyone was a little puzzled. Even Yi Ding and the others were dumbfounded. Yin Nuoxing rushed over in a hurry for the void sky, ancient mirror. However, she threw the void sky, ancient mirror back at this moment. Of course, Xian and the others were also puzzled. However, they all believed in Yin Nuoxing. Since he did this, there must be a reason. They only needed to wait for the latter's explanation. "Let's go back. We're going back to sleep." Yin Nuoxing waved his hand. Nothing could be seen from his calm and handsome face. However, the calmer he was, the more everyone felt that something was wrong. However, they couldn't tell what was wrong. Dozens of eyes stared blankly at Yin Nuoxing and the others until they reached the entrance of the bronze passage. Only then did Yi Ding and the others react and quickly followed. Although they were still a little confused, I didn't want to stay here and become targets for those people. Luo and Mei Mao had a strange expression on their faces. She lowered her head and looked at the mirror in her hand. A bright light flashed in her eyes. She seemed to have understood something and couldn't help but laugh. Her calm laughter echoed in the empty space. Her master and the others were even more confused. Has she gone crazy? Cunning guy, Luo scolded in a low voice. She couldn't hide the helplessness and smile on her pretty face. When she saw everyone's stunned gaze, she casually waved her hand and said softly to the old man refining the void sky, ancient mirror, "Old Yin, put the void sky, ancient mirror back. Let's go back first. This time I miscalculated." When her master heard this, his eyes widened in astonishment. He had trained her for more than 10 years and knew that scheming was her strong point. He had never heard her say that she made a mistake, but today, even her senior and junior brothers had a strange expression on their faces. They had never seen Luo take the initiative to admit defeat. "Where are we going?" The young man who had just said that there was more than one way to go to the outside world couldn't help but ask. When they reached the entrance of the bronze passage, Luo raised her head. She seemed to want to see Yin Nuoxing and the others leaving. She couldn't help but roll her eyes. After a while, she turned around and said softly, "The mystery dragon ritual in half a month." Huh? Everyone was puzzled. Chapter 475. The Void Heaven Ancient Mirror contains a strange energy that doesn't belong to this world. It should be an artifact of the Divine City and possesses the unique energy of the Divine City. By combining the power of the holy artifact and the strange energy of the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror, we might be able to open a passage to the Divine City. The white-robed woman explained calmly. Her jade-like hand gently stroked her fine black hair as she let out a long sigh and said faintly, "But just now, those imprints disappeared. They disappeared very thoroughly, as if they never existed. In this way, the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror is equivalent to being half destroyed. At least, it won't be of much help to us." How could this be? When everyone heard this, they were a little dazed as they stared at the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror in a daze. In the bronze passage, Yin Nuoxing and the others were rushing back in the direction they came from. Yuanxi finally couldn't help but ask about what happened just now. Yin Nuoxing turned her head and looked at him helplessly. She raised her hand, and some silver-blue light rose up, slowly condensing into a 2-meter-long silver needle. She glanced at Ling Hongjian and said, "The Void Heaven Ancient Mirror contains the power of space and the fluctuations of the realm of the gods. Perhaps using the holy artifact and the ancient mirror can open a passage to the realm of the gods. I used Ling Hongjian's energy to absorb the power of space in the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror, and the energy of the holy artifact covered my hand, preventing me from putting it into my body." "Then why did you return it? Couldn't you just take it and run?" "If they used the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror to go to the realm of the gods, then the holy artifact would be gone," Yuanxi said again. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing sighed and said, "That's why I'm betting. I'm betting that it's useless for them to use the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror. If they put it down, then in order to go to the Divine City, they will definitely choose another method. After 10 years of preparation, there's definitely a second method, the Profound Dragon Ritual. Of the two, the first method is safer. Once they choose to participate in the Profound Dragon Ritual, then there's nothing to say. We just have to wait for them to use the holy artifact to open the sky. And if I'm not wrong, she probably wanted to gift the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror to me, but little she got it first. If I don't return it, then she will fight me to the death," Yin Nuoxing muttered. "Of course, all of this is my guess. It's better to say it's my intuition." "Why?" Yuanxi had just realized something, but she was instantly confused again. Yin Nuoxing thought for a while, then shook his head. He just thought that if the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror was in their hands, then the one in control would most likely be Luo. Moreover, his purest thought was that since they were already in front of him, there was no point in snatching the Void Heaven Ancient Mirror. However, when he saw that there were so many people, it would be troublesome to deal with them. So, he simply changed his mind and destroyed one of their keys to the realm of the gods. Moreover, Yin Nuoxing's goal had always been the profound dragon ritual. As long as the girl called Luo Air insisted on going to the realm of the gods, then she would definitely participate in the profound dragon ritual. Then his goal would be achieved. He's forcing me to participate in the profound dragon ritual, Luo Air said bitterly. As long as we insist on going to the divine city, then we must participate in the profound dragon ritual. We can't go to the forbidden zone. If the ancient mirror is in their hands, then we still have a bargaining chip. But what's so interesting about the profound dragon ritual? I really don't understand. That young man rolled his eyes, then said casually, if they also want to go to the divine city, then why not just bring them along? It's not like we can't bring one more person. Why make it so complicated? This question also made the crowd somewhat puzzled. They didn't understand what Yin Nuoxing's goal was. They only felt that after going around in circles, in the end, they still had to put the relic back where it was supposed to be. Luo Air's master, who had both his hands in his sleeves, lightly gripped them. After a while, he suddenly thought of something and raised his head. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Luo Air looking at him and nodding her head. Only then did he say, "Old friend, do you think they might be people from the divine city?" The few middle-aged men who were walking leisurely were startled, and their expressions slightly changed. The brawny man frowned slightly, then lightly snorted and said, "I've never heard of people from the outside world coming to the profound dragon continent. They might just be core disciples of some hidden family." I said, "It's just a guess." "What if it's true?" Luo Air's master also frowned and said. The atmosphere in the bronze passage suddenly quieted down, and the crowd's expressions didn't look too good. Several pairs of eyes quickly made eye contact, then moved away. If it's true, it's a miracle, but I think those people are most likely from the divine city. Luo Air softly opened her mouth, saying the two words that were in everyone's mind. Hearing this, the crowd smiled bitterly. Since even she thought so, even if those people were really from the divine city, moreover, if they're from the divine city, then that young man's situation could be explained. I'm afraid he's mastered some powerful Tao or law. Luo Air's master nodded, then turned his head to look at the dozen or so young men, and said, "You guys should also work harder and reach the martial realm as soon as possible." "Yes." The dozen or so young men solemnly replied. Running blindly in the maze, without the guidance of the aura of life just now, Yin Nuoxing led the Yin and Yi Ding to run around in the maze like headless flies. He even forgot how he came here just now and leaped in the dark bronze passage. Once in a while, they would rush into a spacious space from the passage. Inside the spacious space, there was a pillar. On top of the pillar, there was a powerful object. Yi Ding and the others couldn't sense most of it, but Yin Nuoxing knew that these so-called forbidden objects all had the aura of the god's world. Most likely, they came from there to the mystic dragon continent. However, Yi Ding and the others didn't dare touch them. The powerful aura from those weapons was oppressing their nerves, making them want to quickly turn around. After running around the passage for half an hour, Yin Nuoxing finally led everyone out of this spacious underground maze by relying on his powerful soul power. Seeing the familiar spiral staircase, they couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. They finally got out of that damn place. From the center of the staircase, they flew into the sky and arrived at the entrance of the Forbidden Palace. Yin Nuoxing had just calmed down, and when he raised his head, his gaze instantly became strange. Yuan Shi and the others were also somewhat speechless, looking at him. They really didn't know whether this guy was doing it on purpose or not. The crowd in front also heard the commotion behind them, and they all turned around with strange expressions. As expected, they saw Yin Nuoxing and the others with even stranger expressions. Luo Air's beautiful face also changed slightly. She thought that this guy had left long ago, but she didn't expect that he was still behind them. Glancing at the crowd, Yin Nuoxing indifferently led Xian and the others to a small corner and walked toward the entrance of the main palace. His handsome face still had an indifferent expression, making the group unable to see through him. "May I know young master's name?" Suddenly, Luo Air took 2 steps forward with light steps, and a faint smile hung on her beautiful face. Her master and the others were shocked, and just as they were about to push her behind them, Luo Air waved her jade-like hand, indicating that they didn't need to be so nervous. Yin Nuoxing, who was about to walk to the entrance of the palace, stopped in his tracks and turned around. His tranquil purple-gold eyes glanced at her, and the latter stubbornly didn't shift her gaze away and looked straight into his eyes. After a moment, Yin Nuoxing said, "Yin Nuoxing." He said each word slowly, and although his voice was indifferent, there was an unforgettable taste in it. The woman smiled lightly and brushed the hair in front of her forehead and said indifferently, "Jun Luo. I'll remember it." Yin Nuoxing nodded and didn't say anything else. He turned around lightly, and his light purple hair fluttered slightly, giving the crowd an arrogant back view. Suddenly, Jun Luo laughed lightly, and Yin Nuoxing stopped in his tracks once again. "I wonder if young Master Yin is from the Star Zhao Empire's Yin family?" However, this time, he didn't turn around. Yin Nuoxing looked at the bright moon in the sky and guessed that Jun Luo might know something. He thought for a moment and said, "You're a smart person." Then, he didn't stay any longer and stepped out of the Forbidden Palace's entrance. Ziyin and the others hurriedly followed behind. Seeing Yin Nuoxing and the others disappear from the Forbidden Palace's entrance, and the former's words still reverberated in her ears, the smile on Jun Luo Yi's face widened, and she said, "I understand." When the people behind her heard this, they were slightly startled and looked at the empty entrance with disbelief. Their hearts trembled. Could it be that this guy really came from the Divine City? Little star, she seems to know. In midair, Ziyin turned back to look at the black Forbidden Palace. After thinking for a moment, he turned back and whispered to Yin Nuoxing, "If she knows, then she knows. Even if she knows, it doesn't change the fact that she will attend the profound dragon ritual. Or rather, it's because she knows that she will participate in the profound dragon ritual this time." Yin Nuoxing shrugged nonchalantly. Yin Nuoxing turned back, looked at Yi Ding, and said softly, "Go back and rest. The profound dragon ritual will be held as scheduled in half a month's time. You could just tell your father this." "Understood." Yi Ding nodded. Although he was a little confused, he still understood the general situation. Therefore, he didn't say much. After getting down, he left with the first prince and the others, and asked Yin Nuoxing and the others to rest in his room. He also asked Yi Yin to stay behind. In response, Yin Nuoxing didn't refuse. They also needed a place to rest. As for Yi Yin, she was looking in the direction that Yi Ding and the others left. She pouted her little mouth, as if she was dissatisfied with leaving her here. She was also a little panicked. Her little heart was a little nervous that she had to stay behind to take care of this group of weirdos. After returning to the room, just as she sat down, Yin Nuoxing glanced at Yi Yin. Seeing her nervous look, she couldn't help but sigh. Were they really that weird? "Yin Air, can you tell me about the Yin family of the Star Empire?" Shocked by this sudden question, Yi Yin immediately retreated a lot from the sofa, far away from Yin Nuoxing and the others. It wasn't until she saw their strange gazes that she moved back with a blush on her face. After thinking for a while, her jade-like hands clenched her dress, took a deep breath, and slowly began to speak. "There is indeed a Yin family in the Star Empire. They're the most powerful family in the empire other than the imperial family. It is said that the experts in the family are all Dharma throne experts. Compared to other forces, they pay more attention to the cultivation of the mind. Moreover, they're a powerful family of talismans. No matter the grade, as long as it is related to the Yin family, it is sold at a very high price. Moreover, the effects are much better than those made by ordinary talisman masters." Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing nodded slightly. Mr. Yin, are you interested in the Yin family?" Although she was a little nervous, Yi Yin still asked. "A little." Yin Nuoxing nodded and didn't deny it. "However," she said, "but I am interested in the Yin family only because their surname is Yin. In the realm of the gods, She had never heard of any major forces with the surname Yun. More or less, she was a little curious. Now that she heard about the Yun family, she was naturally interested. "I will arrange a carriage for you," Yun thought for a while and said. Just as she finished speaking, before she could get up, Yun saw Yun Nuashing's strange smile. Her little heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Then she saw the latter grin and said, "What do you think your brother will think if I kidnap you now?" Yun's pretty face paled. Before she had the time to get up, she felt her delicate shoulder being pressed down by someone. She stiffly turned her head, only to see a head of long, dark, purple hair hanging down and a peerlessly beautiful face smiling sweetly at her. Chapter 476. The bright moon shone with a gentle light. High up in the sky, a huge purplish-black sword silently swept across the sky. A group of very young people sat on the sword. Among them, a beautiful face was completely pale. She was curled up in a corner and shivering. She looked like a little lamb that had fallen into a pack of wolves. Qin Yin turned around and glanced at Yi Yun. She felt sorry for her. The little girl had been pulled 10,000 meters up in the sky before she could react. She was so scared that she didn't dare to say a word. Seeing this, Qin Yin couldn't help but push Yun Nuashing. She said angrily, "Look at you. You're so cold." She's so scared that she doesn't even dare to say a word. After saying that, Qin Yin got up gently and sat down beside Yi Yun. She rubbed the latter's head with her delicate hand. Yi Yun's delicate body stiffened and she looked at her in fear. After a long while, she calmed down a little when she felt that Qin Yin didn't have any ill intentions. Yun Nuashing rolled her eyes when she heard that. What the hell is cold? However, she felt a little apologetic when she saw Yi Yun acting like a frightened kitten. Although she had left a note for Yi Ding, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to take it so directly. Yun Nuashing scratched her head and looked up at the huge moon. With a thought, the Netherworld Ruins sword flew up into the clouds. It pierced through the clouds in just a moment. She then turned around and saw that Mei Mao was so scared that she closed her eyes tightly. She said softly, "If you're scared, raise your head and look here." When Yi Yun heard this, although she didn't want to follow Yun Nuashing's instructions, she still subconsciously opened her beautiful eyes. At a glance, she saw the huge moon hanging high in the sky. For a moment, she was stunned. Her slightly trembling, delicate body also stopped. Qin Yin heaved a sigh of relief when she saw this. She raised her head and looked at the approaching moon. A lot of thoughts came to her mind. Is it night in the God realm? What would it be like to see two moons from the sky? Although she had been to Night God Peak the last time, she did not take a good look at the sky, which made her feel a little regretful. Thinking up to this point, Mei Mao couldn't help but look at Yun Nuashing, who was sitting at the very front. As she looked at her back, a complicated emotion flashed through her eyes. She still remembered what Yuan she had said. Really, if it wasn't for the fact that the Qin clan needs me, it would be nice to play with you, Qin Yin murmured in her heart. Then, she laughed at herself. She wasn't born for herself, so how could she hope for such impossible things? Sighing inwardly, Qin Yin raised her head once more, and a hint of relief and determination could be seen in her eyes. But at least for now, I want to live for myself, even if it's just for a month or even half a month. Yun Nuashing didn't know that his casual action had shaken Qin Yan's heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought everyone to such a high altitude. He liked to fly to high places and look at the sky or look down at the shrinking ground below. His heart would be filled with emptiness. He liked this kind of atmosphere very much. Yun Nuashing didn't choose to fly to the Star Empire immediately. Instead, he rode the Netherruin sword and slowly flew above the sea of clouds. Little Phoenix's body had also become much bigger. It was about 6 meters long and wide. It flew on the right side of the Netherruin sword and turned its huge head. Its black eyes were filled with excitement as it looked at Yun Nuashing. It seemed to want to express something. Yun Nuashing, who was meditating, finally couldn't help but open his eyes after being stared at by this gaze for a long time. He looked at Little Phoenix helplessly. What was this fellow looking forward to? Little Phoenix was a divine beast, but it was still in its infancy. Its intelligence was much higher than that of the human race, which was known as the wisest of all things. However, perhaps because its intelligence was too high, it couldn't speak before it could transform. Compared to some beasts and monsters, it was much more troublesome. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the basin-sized black eyes. This little fellow was born in his soul. It was nourished by his soul, the power of the stars, and his life force. In other words, it was no different from being born from him. It could understand everything with just one look. He didn't hold back. He nimbly jumped off the Netheruan sword and directly onto Little Phoenix. As soon as he sat down, Little Phoenix let out an extremely excited cry. Carrying Yin Nuoxing, its body turned into a streak of fire and rushed into the distance. It left behind an extremely dazzling flame in the sky. The Netheruan sword and the people on it were stunned. These two fellows aren't cultivating or sleeping in the middle of the night. Are they haunting us? Yuanshi looked at the dazzling flame traces in the distance. He was a little dumbfounded. Have you forgotten Little Star's wish? Xian covered her mouth and chuckled. Yin Nuoxing had always wanted to ride divine beasts, dragons, and other creatures to soar in the 9 heavens. Although there was no dragon now, there was still a young phoenix. Half of his wish had been fulfilled. I don't understand. We can both fly. Why can't we use swords? Why must we use phoenixes? The Netheruan sword under Xian suddenly glowed, and a gloomy voice faintly rang out. Everyone on the flying sword smiled bitterly. They didn't know what Yin Nuoxing was thinking. In fact, Yin Nuoxing was feeling very good right now. He carried Little Phoenix and flew freely in the sky. Little Phoenix even did many difficult movements. The fierce wind almost blew Yin Nuoxing down. Flying at full speed, it wasn't any slower than the Netheruan sword. However, when the terrifying flame in the sky passed through the clouds and passed by some cities below, the people who were discovered cried out in alarm. A strange phenomenon appeared in the sky, and they thought that something big was about to happen. They made a ruckus in the middle of the night. When the stars shone, the man and the beast returned to the Netheruan sword exhausted. They fell asleep immediately, making everyone smile bitterly. Why did they have to torture themselves like this? Yishi poked Yin Nuoxing, who had fallen asleep on the ground, and smiled helplessly. The imperial city of the Star Providence Empire was the empire in the most eastern part of the world. Every day, it was the first to welcome the arrival of the morning sun. When a ray of sunlight fell, the Star Providence city would also instantly awaken its slumbering vitality. Large groups of people would rush out of the streets and alleys at the same time. One after another, their voices would eventually converge into a sound wave. This place was as lively as Dragon Mist City. The Yin family is on the outskirts of the Star Fortune City. They occupy a large area in the east of the city, and the Imperial Palace is in the northwest direction. It stands on the peak of a mountain, and you can touch the starry sky if you reach out your hand. There's only a small winding path in front of the mountain that leads to the Imperial Palace. Even if you fly, it is difficult to reach the peak in one go. Even if you fly, at a city gate of the Star Fortune City, a few young figures stood side by side. A beautiful woman in green clothes pointed in a few directions at the city gate and explained to the people beside her. However, in the end, Mei Mao looked at the young man in the black windbreaker with a strange expression, and her words suddenly froze. The few of them replied with a drawn-out sound. There seemed to be some curiosity in their calm expressions as they all looked towards the northwest direction. A tall mountain rose from the ground, and a group of golden palaces were built around the mountain. The tallest black tower was so high that one could touch the clouds if they stood on top of it. Everyone in the 8 great empires knows about this. Only you guys would be curious. Could it be that you guys are really from the Divine City? The beautiful woman in green rolled her eyes. Her last sentence was said very softly, and only the few of them could hear it. The young man in the windbreaker touched the firebird on his shoulder and glanced at her indifferently. Then he smiled and said, "Why don't you guess?" Seeing this, the beautiful woman in green pouted and waved her small fist at him. She said coquettishly, "I'll hit you." While the young woman was coquettishly grumbling, the people who passed by and stopped to look at this group of people were so stunned that they stopped in their tracks. Pairs of eyes swept over the young woman in green, with some adoration and some strange gazes. Being stared at by so many people, the young woman in green was so embarrassed that her face turned red. She stepped on the young man in the windbreaker and angrily rushed towards the city gate. This girl's moves. Her kicks are really King ruthless. The young man in the windbreaker was stepped on so hard that he took in a breath of cold air and immediately jumped up. There was some pain on his handsome face. His face was already prettier than a girl's, and immediately, many people turned to look at him. The young man in the windbreaker broke down. He reached out and pinched the young man in white beside him. Then, holding the hand of the girl in purple, he rushed into the city gate. "Brother Newall, wait for me." The little girl with the wine-red hair was shocked and hurriedly chased after them with small, quick steps. "Ow! Are you poisonous?" The young man in white screamed strangely from being pinched. His handsome face was full of astonishment. He paused for a second, then rushed in as well. Only the woman in the black dress was left in a mess in the wind. Although many people were looking at her, she did not lose her elegance and calmly followed them into the city gate. On the noisy street, the people who had just left one by one finally stopped, panting. Only the woman in the black dress, who was the last to leave, was still breathing calmly. Every step she took covered a distance of dozens of meters, different from the young man in the windbreaker and the others who were purely running. "We've run into the Yun family's territory. This is a market. Occasionally, we can find some good things in these places." The beautiful woman in green put her jade hands on her small waist and panted a few times. Her jade fingers pointed at a magnificent building and said, "This is the auction house." The young man in the windbreaker nodded slightly. When the woman in the black dress arrived, he walked toward the magnificent building unhurriedly. He heard the fierce bidding coming from inside and walked over curiously. "Hey, wait, can we not go? Hey, hey." Seeing his actions, the beautiful face of the woman in green fell. She wanted to call him back, but the young man in the windbreaker did not even bother to look at her. Even the others followed him indifferently. The woman in the black dress even conveniently brought her along. The former's small face immediately fell. Soul condensing battle talisman. 1. 8 million going once. Is there a higher price? 2 million. I'm taking it. Get out of here. 2. 1 million. CKU. 2,150,000. As soon as he pushed open the door, he heard the terrifying sound waves coming from inside like a tsunami. The young man in the windbreaker felt a little dizzy and habitually covered his ears with his hands. He waved his free hand at the maid who was walking over. Then, he was about to walk through the door in front of him. The young woman in green pulled him back and took out a green token. She waved it in front of the maid. The latter's face changed slightly and led the way respectfully. The young man in the windbreaker looked at the young woman in green in astonishment. He was about to say something, but he saw her curl her small mouth with an arrogant look. The young man in green immediately shut his mouth and rolled his eyes at her. He followed the maid into a corridor. When the young woman in green saw this, May Mao felt a little resentful. Not long after, the maid led them to a golden door and respectfully left. The young man in the windbreaker gently pushed the door open and walked in. The terrifying demonic sound rushed into his mind in the most violent way, causing him to almost lose his soul. After walking through the door, the young man in the windbreaker realized that this was an empty high platform. There were rows of seats below, and densely packed black heads were shaking. There were a lot of people here, and there were also a few high platforms. At this time, there were people with red faces and thick necks shouting, causing the sound waves below to stack even more violently. 6 million. I'll take the Yun family's battle talisman. Just as the few of them sat down, they heard that a talisman had been sold for a high price of 6 million because of a tenor voice. The whole place was silent. Some people's faces were uncertain, and there were a few times when they raised their hands with some hesitation. When the young woman in green heard the tenor voice, Her pretty face changed slightly, and a trace of fierceness flashed past. Her eyes turned mischievously, and then she looked at the young man in the windbreaker on her right. Her small head moved closer, and her red lips opened slightly. She muttered something, which made the young man's face look a little strange. He took out an item from his pocket and showed it to the young woman. After she confirmed it, he nodded with a strange expression and raised his hand. 8 million. Chapter 477. The sudden shout, with a hint of disturbance, made the entire auction house quiet down in an instant. Everyone's gaze turned to the golden VIP seats that had been empty just now. Their gazes were very strange, and the tenor who shouted 6 million also stared at the stage in a daze. Then he also looked at the VIP seats. Gritting his teeth, the tenor patted his blue robe, raised his right hand, and shouted, 9 million, 10 million. Before the tenor's shout could leave his throat, it was interrupted by another shout from the man in the windbreaker. The former's hand froze in midair, and he swallowed the shout. His face turned red, and his lungs were squeezed, and his body almost fell to the ground. Even the people in the auction house were puzzled. He had increased the price 3 times in one go, and he was competing with them. What was he doing? You? The tenor's cheeks twitched wildly. He had been in the auction house for so many years, but he had never seen someone so powerful. He was actually bidding with himself. Even the auctioneer on the stage was puzzled. He couldn't help but ask, Sir, is this 8 million or 10 million? 10 million. Why can't I? Yun Nuashing flicked her light purple hair and smiled faintly. Of course, the highest bidder wins. If you're not convinced, continue. After saying that, she gave the tenor a provocative look, which made the latter's face turn red. His eyebrows trembled, and he was stunned for a moment. Yun Nuashing glanced at him, then looked at the woman on the stage. She raised her chin and asked her to end it quickly. He was still interested in these talismans. There seemed to be no research on talismans in the God realm, or maybe he hadn't come into contact with them yet. Of course, he might not be able to understand anything with just one talisman. He was just interested in studying it. Soul condensing talisman, 10 million going once. The auctioneer on the stage shouted. When she realized that there was no other sound, she slammed the small hammer in her hand. Following the thud, the tenor's gaze turned slightly cold. He turned around and glanced at Yun Nuashing and the others. The people sitting beside him heard the sound of him gnashing his teeth and hurriedly tried to persuade him. After a while, they managed to calm him down. However, his gaze was still a little cold. People from the Dragon, Mist Empire? The tenor recognized Yun, who was standing beside Yun Nuashing. His cold eyes were startled, and his lustful eyes were gloomy and uncertain. He secretly sneered in his heart. Anyway, the 7 big empires have already taken action. You guys can jump around for a while more. He flung his sleeves and looked at the auction stage again. He didn't look at Yun Nuashing and the others. Seeing that even the tenor had given up, some of the people below were stunned. Then, they looked at Yun Nuashing and the others in surprise. They were very curious about the identity of this group of people that made this tenor give up. This also made many people hold back their thoughts of bidding for it. They seemed to recognize you. Yun Nuashing had a feeling that something was wrong. Of the people of Yun Nuashing, of Yun Nuashing of Yun. Calm, the direct descendants of the 8 great empires often appear in front of everyone. It is very normal for them to be recognized. Yi supported her chin with the back of her hand and said with a faint smile, Of Yun, 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 of Yun. No, you're thinking too much. Yin didn't blush or panic. She looked at the auction stage calmly with her bright eyes. This made Yun Nuashing of Yun Nuashing's eyes squint. However, he didn't say anything. After the soul consolidating battle talisman was taken down, many other precious items were brought up. Each of them had a gorgeous appearance. Together with the extravagant description of these items by the lady, each of them was sold for a very good price. However, none of them were sold for as high a price as the soul consolidating battle talisman. Mei Mao of Yun Nuashing of Yun Nuashing of Yun Nuashing of Yun Nuashing of Yun Nuashing's indifference. However, she didn't have the intention to bid after thinking that it wasn't necessary for her to get it. In the end, Yun Nuashing of Yun Nuashing wasn't interested even in the last high-grade weapon. He had many good things on him. Even if there was something he wanted, he would get it back in the God realm. He wouldn't compete with a group of people in a small world. If he wasn't interested in the soul-consolidating battle talisman, he wouldn't have bid. Seeing the colorful longbow, Yun Nuashing had a thought. Her consciousness entered the spiritual world. She saw Ziyi sitting by the bed, flipping through a thick book in boredom. The monstrous sea of fire was actually flowing calmly. In front of her, a large flame was churning endlessly. It was like a flower. There was a long root that connected to the sea of fire below. Although it didn't emit a terrifying temperature, Yun Nuashing could feel how terrifying the power it contained was. In that ball of flame, a glazed crystal floated up and down. Sparkling and translucent colors flowed out, blocking the invasion of the flame. A peak god emperor combined with a divine flame that's comparable to a divine flame ranked in the top 20 or 30. After burning for a few years, you still can't do anything to a 12th grade divine item? Yun Nuashing said softly as she walked to the edge of the bed. She glanced at the graceful figure, then looked at the glazed divine crystal. How can a 12th grade divine item be refined so easily? Not to mention me. Even an expert who just entered the reincarnation realm wouldn't be able to do anything without the assistance of a divine flame. It didn't even turn her head. She was still quietly reading the book. Yun Nuashing was helpless. A few years had passed, but the layer of energy that covered the glazed divine crystal didn't break. Moreover, once such a divine item was refined, there would be a phenomenon of heaven and earth. It's been hard on you. Yun Nuashing walked forward and gently massaged Ziya's shoulders. It was as if she wanted to use a massage to relieve her fatigue. Puffed. Hearing that, Ziyi burst out laughing. She was laughing so hard that her delicate body was trembling. However, she didn't interrupt Yun Nuashing. This brat's massage was quite comfortable. Oh, I'm the incarnation of flames. I'm a ball of fire myself. It's not difficult to make the flames burn endlessly, let alone in the spiritual world. Yun Nuashing shook his head and said, "You're borrowing the power of the Godhead in your body. I can feel it." Ziya's pretty face stiffened. This divine body that she had forged contained a huge amount of Godhead's power, but it was very difficult for her to use it well. Even after using all her control, she could only mobilize a little bit of the Godhead. However, this was in Yun Nuashing's spiritual world. It was normal for him to discover it. All right, don't look at me with such mushy eyes. If you have time to give me a massage, why don't you go and subdue Ziyan instead? Ziyi suddenly sneered. She waved her hand and glared at him. Yun Nuashing was speechless. He rolled his eyes and patted Ziya's shoulder hard. Then, he escaped from the spiritual world. Ziyi rubbed her shoulder helplessly as she watched Yun Nuashing disappear from the spiritual world. A trace of redness appeared on her pretty face. She couldn't help but mutter, "This brat is making me itch to death." Then, her eyes focused, and the calm sea of fire suddenly turned into raging waves. Like a ferocious beast, it crashed into the colored glass, divine crystal. A terrifying and mysterious power quietly flowed, and the colored glass divine crystal did not show any signs of weakness. The energy light film became even brighter. When his consciousness returned, Yun Nuashing just happened to see that the dazzling longbow was bought by the high-pitched man at a sky-high price, which made him stunned. This was a nouveau riche. Could it be that he was the young master of some influential family? Thinking of this, he felt even more that he had been scammed by Yi Yun. When Yun Nuashing looked over, the tenor happened to look over as well. When he saw the former's strange gaze, he couldn't help but feel amused. He glared at the former with disdain. Yun Nuashing rolled his eyes and ignored him. This made the tenor angry again. "Just you wait. When the 7 countries' soldiers arrive, let's see how you'll cry." The tenor cursed fiercely in his heart. After the auction ended, Yun Nuashing directly went to find the auctioneer and took the soul-condensing battle talisman. He glanced at it and was instantly disappointed. Although he didn't know the grade of this talisman, he could feel its power. In comparison, it wasn't much stronger than an ordinary first-grade immortal rank array. However, this soul-condensing battle talisman could already cause some damage to heaven-rank experts. Yin Nuoxing didn't care about it, because they came from that great world, and he was interested only because Yin Nuoxing didn't seem to know of such things in the Pantheon realm. Of course, it was also possible that he didn't know about it. Fortunately, the currencies of the two worlds were interconnected. Yin Nuoxing vaguely showed Yi Yun the gold coins of the Pantheon realm and didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Of course, nothing happened during the transaction, and it was completed smoothly. In the end, the lady enthusiastically chatted with Yin Nuoxing for a while before the latter fled. Sixth Princess of the Dragon, Mist Empire. Why are you so free to come to the Xingzhou Empire? Just as Yin Nuoxing and the others were about to leave, a high-pitched laughter suddenly sounded from behind them. Yin Nuoxing's footsteps paused, and his cheeks twitched. When he saw Yin looking away with a guilty expression, he wanted to bite her. This girl was actually causing trouble. He sighed in his heart. I'll settle this with you when we get back. Then, he turned his body slightly and looked at the group of people with the tenor with his light purple and gold eyes. He said indifferently, What's wrong? Do you have a problem with it? When the tenor saw Yin Nuoxing, he was stunned. Then, he said coldly, Who do you think you are? I'm talking to your master. What does it have to do with you? Are all the slaves of the dragon, Mist Empire, so impudent? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. His eyes widened in shock. Slave? When did he become a slave? Yuan Shi and the others couldn't help but cover their faces and laugh bitterly in their hearts. It's over. There's going to be blood. Even Yi Yun silently prayed. Mei Mao looked at the tenor sadly and sighed. Qiongya, goodbye. That tenor called Qiongya was startled. And when he saw Yi Yun still waving her jade-like hand at him, he felt that something was wrong. And just when he was about to shout out, he suddenly felt an unparalleled and terrifying force. And it was like a ferocious beast rushing over from the side. That force was so fast that even the people behind him couldn't react in time. They could only feel the force that could break through everything rushing toward them. Bang. A few muffled sounds of collision merged into one. Even the ground was blasted open by the recoil force. Then, Qiongya and the others spat out mouthfuls of blood as if they didn't cost money. Their bodies were directly thrown hundreds of meters away by that punch. They didn't even hear the sound of them landing on the ground. Congratulations to Mr. Qiongya for winning the honor of being the #1 cannon fodder in this trip to the Mystic Dragon continent. The prize is a luxurious hospital bed for half a year and 1,000 meters to send him off. Let's give him a round of applause and hope that he will continue to work hard next time. Yuan Shi transmitted his voice to the others indifferently. Qin Yin and Yi Shi tactfully clapped their hands, causing Yin Nuoxing's face to turn even darker. Seeing the arc that stretched hundreds of meters across the sky, Yi Yun shrunk back in fear. She knew that Yin Nuoxing was very powerful, but she didn't expect him to be this powerful. Yin Nuoxing turned around and looked at Yi Yun with a dark smile on his face. Yi Yun was so scared that she almost couldn't keep her smile. She hurriedly said with a fawning smile, Mr. Yun, I'm sorry. Can I help you massage your shoulders? Yin Nuoxing grinned. He clenched his hands into fists and pressed them on Yi Yun's temples. The latter's little face immediately collapsed. She looked like she was about to cry. Chapter 478. The Yin clan was located in the eastern part of Xingzhou City. Their territory covered almost 1/10 of Xingzhou City. It was only a little smaller than the Imperial Palace. The young men and women of the Yin clan were extremely talented. Out of every 5 of them, one could become a spiritual talisman master. They had the same status as the celestial spell masters in the world of the gods. Spiritual talisman masters had a wide network of connections. If there was a calamity, they could summon strong cultivators from all over the world to help them. That was one of the reasons why the Yun clan was able to do so well in Xingzhou City. Yin Nuoxing stood in front of the gate of the Yun clan and looked at the signboard hanging high up. Then, she looked at the enormous mansion. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help burping. The Yun family, from the martial realm and sky realm experts to the children who have just reached the spirit martial realm or the soul cleansing realm, are basically all spirit talisman masters. After countless generations of accumulation, they can be said to be as rich as a country. Even the imperial family of Xingzhou is somewhat afraid of them. However, the two forces have a good relationship, so the imperial family has not done anything out of line. Yin whispered in Yin Nuoxing's ear. When Yin Nuoxing put her fists on her temples, she was ready to scream. However, Yin Nuoxing didn't do anything. She was scared to death. Sigh. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Could the imperial palace coexist with a force that could threaten them? They were just temporarily harmless, and in order to maintain the balance. At that moment, a group of young men and women came from the Yun clan. When they saw Yin Nuoxing and the others, their eyes lit up. They couldn't help but feel their hearts skip a beat. However, when they saw that they were sizing up the Yun clan, they frowned. "Your Excellency, why are you looking for the Yun clan?" asked one of the young men. Yin Nuoxing turned her head and glanced at them. The young man who had spoken was startled. Then the young man shook his head and said, "If you have something to say, then forget it. If you don't have anything to say, that's fine too. Just taking a look." Hearing Yin Nuoxing's ambiguous answer, the few people from the Yun family all frowned. The young man who spoke was also a bit displeased. His gaze seriously sized up the few people. When his gaze landed on Ziyan's body, it slightly froze. Everyone loved beauty. With Ziyan's appearance, she actually paled in comparison to the girl beside them. "If you want to look, then look. Don't block my way." The girl next to him frowned and looked unhappy. She was wearing a cloud-colored dress and looked noble and cold. She was also very beautiful, but compared to Ziyan, she was dull. She was naturally very unhappy when she saw the way the people around her looked at Ziyan. After speaking, she directly walked past Yin Nuoxing and the others. However, a formation diagram can only engrave a formation, but a talisman can engrave some secret skills, mystic skills, and the like. Yin Nuoxing said softly, "It shouldn't be difficult for me to engrave it. You saw through it with just a glance?" Yin was shocked. He could see through the talisman with just a glance. However, she didn't dare to sneer at his words. She knew that Yin Nuoxing dared to say that because he was confident, but she still didn't believe it. "You can say that. However, it's not that easy to engrave secret skills into lines on the talisman paper." Yin Nuoxing nodded. He also didn't know how the lines were calculated. After casually looking at it, Yin Nuoxing looked at the building on the other side of the wall. He was a little distressed. If he wanted to forcefully break in and steal something, it would be fine. However, now that he wanted to enter the Yun family and see something in the Yun family, he really didn't know what to do. "Nuoxing, why did you come to the Yun family?" Yuanshi asked, puzzled. He didn't think that there was anything in the Yun family in the small world that could attract Yin Nuoxing, no matter how powerful it was. "Didn't I say that day? In the Yun family, what I care about is the Yun." Yin Nuoxing smiled and emphasized the word Yun. Little Star wants to see the Yun family's genealogy. Ziyan transmitted his voice at the right time, causing Yuanshi to be speechless. However, he had already guessed it when Yin Nuoxing finished his words. Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment and looked at the door, not far away. He nodded and strode over. Ziyan and the others also slowly followed. No one knew what he was thinking. Just as they approached the door, the two guards standing there swept their cold gazes over. Their gazes were scrutinizing Yin Nuoxing and the others. However, they were surprised to find that other than the woman in green, they couldn't see through the other 5 people. However, they could feel an extremely dangerous feeling from them. Even the little girl gave them an unfathomable feeling. "You are?" Encountering such people, the 2 guards didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly cupped their hands and asked in a deep voice, "I would like to meet the upper echelons of a Yun family." Yin Nuoxing looked at the 2 guards and said indifferently. He didn't seem to be overbearing. He only said a few words very calmly. "Do you have an appointment? Which elder do you want to meet?" Hearing this vague answer, The guard was a little confused. Although he was a little puzzled, he didn't dare to get angry and continued to speak respectfully. When Yishi saw that Yin Nuashing was preparing his words, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and said, "Brother Na, let's just fight our way in. What are you afraid of?" When the two guards heard this, they were shocked. The one who spoke just now even waved his hand and asked the other to quickly go in and report the situation. Yun Nuashing smiled bitterly and patted Yishi's head. He said, "No, we have to be reasonable. The Yun family didn't offend us. Those people were staring at me just now. I feel uncomfortable," Qin Yin suddenly said indifferently, startling Yun Nuashing. "I'm not happy either," Xian also muttered as she stroked her long hair, startling Yun Nuashing. "I'm also a little unhappy." Yuanshi also grinned and touched his arm. He seemed to have goosebumps. His cheeky face made Yun Nuashing want to slap him to death. Yun Nuashing's face darkened. These three fellows just wanted to see the world in chaos. He lowered his head and saw that Yishi was about to say something. He hurriedly carried her up and said with a bitter smile, "My little ancestor, don't cause trouble." The two guards were stunned when they saw these people. They wanted to curse, but didn't dare to say anything. They were afraid of offending these people, especially when they heard that they didn't show any respect to the Yun family. Cold sweat broke out on their backs. Okay. I'll be simple and violent." Yin Nuashing shook his head helplessly. When the two guards heard his helpless voice, their expressions changed drastically. They cried out in alarm, "Sir, this is the Yun family. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Quickly call the elder to come out and save us. A great enemy attack!" The other guard ran into the Yun family at top speed. Yin Nuashing was dumbfounded. He rolled his eyes and carried Yishi. He directly controlled the wind element and slowly flew into the sky. The two guards were so shocked that their jaws dropped. "A heaven rank expert is attacking. Quickly call the family head." Yin Nuashing took a light breath. The power of the stars in his body suddenly surged like boiling water. A terrifying aura directly rose from the ground. The two guards were so scared that they almost spat out their teeth. Their jaws dropped so wide that they almost dislocated their jaws. Whoosh! Just as Yin Nuashing's aura erupted, the sound of rushing wind came from the depths of the Yun family. Immediately, several figures could be seen sprinting underground like black leopards. They ran to the Yun family's main entrance in an instant. When they saw the figure floating in the sky and surrounded by stars, they were so scared that their pupils shrank to the size of a needle. What happened? What happened? A heaven rank expert? What a terrifying aura. From a main entrance? This aura. Let's go and have a look. Are you crazy? If people of this level fight, the heavens and earth will definitely shake. Why are you still watching? Even the young man from the Yin family had a shocked expression on his face. Although he was a little afraid, he couldn't help but rush to the main entrance. Not long after the group of people arrived at the main entrance, three figures simultaneously flew into the sky from afar. They looked at Yun Nuashing with a solemn expression. They were a little shocked and didn't know how they had offended such a strong expert. Patriarch! When they saw the middle-aged man in the middle of the three figures, a series of shocked voices sounded from below. The patriarch of the Yun family had been a heaven rank expert for many years and had been famous for a long time. Moreover, he was also a grade 9 talisman master. With his help, today's disaster would be resolved. The middle-aged man was dressed in a green robe. His eyes were bright, and there was a sense of dignity between his brows. However, at this moment, his expression was solemn as he looked at the young man who was carrying a little girl. He couldn't help but gulp. What made him even more shocked was the way the little girl looked at him. It actually made him feel like all his hopes had been dashed to pieces. Where did this peerless expert come from? When did our Yun family offend such a strong expert? The middle-aged man was puzzled. It would be fine if today's matter was resolved smoothly, but if not, when he thought of this, he shuddered violently. He quickly cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist, may I know how our Yun family offended you?" When they heard this, the people of the Yun family below couldn't help but despair in their hearts. The patriarch was actually showing weakness, Yun Nuoxing opened his mouth, causing everyone to be shocked. All of them had nervous expressions, and even the three middle-aged men acted as if they were facing a great enemy. The energy within their bodies began to churn slightly, and drops of cold sweat dripped down from their foreheads. This person could decide many things with just one sentence. "I'm here to take a look," Yun Nuoxing said indifferently. "Take the young man and leave quickly." "From A." The middle-aged man shouted rather excitedly. Then he was stunned. Even the two people beside him were stunned. Come to take a look?" Did they hear wrongly? "I'm here to take a look. Don't be so nervous." Yun Nuoxing thought that they didn't hear clearly and repeated herself. Silence. The air was dead silent. Everyone's mouths were wide open. They were speechless. Her aura of coming to take a look was really frightening. Chapter 479. At this time, in a restaurant in Xingzhou City, a man rushed into the restaurant from afar. He shouted loudly, causing everyone in the restaurant to turn their gazes. The Yun family is being attacked by a Sky Realm expert. After shouting, he ignored everyone's astonishment and hurriedly rushed out, running to another place, leaving behind a group of astonished people. Among this group of people, there were even a few people from the Yun family who had met Yun Nuoxing and the others. At this moment, their faces were filled with ridicule. Attacking the Yun family? Was he tired of living? Not only them, but even the others did not care. The Yun family's power was deeply rooted in Xingzhou City, and they were on good terms with the royal family. Moreover, there was a group of spirit talisman masters. Their wide network even extended to other empires. As long as they called, all the experts in the world would gather here. It was a very terrifying power. For hundreds of years, no one dared to act rashly in front of the Yun family. Just as everyone was laughing and shaking their heads, the restaurant's door was suddenly knocked open with a bang. Another man rushed in with a nervous expression and shouted, "The Yun family is being attacked by a Sky Realm expert. The family head, Yun Feng, has been alerted." Watching the man run out, no one was calm this time. If only one person said it, then it might be a joke. But what if it was two people? Many people were now a little shaken. Could it be that there was really an expert attacking the Yun family? My Yun family stands tall in Xingzhou City. We know countless people. Even the neighboring Ice Snow Empire and Tian He Empire have good relations with us. Who would dare to attack the Yun family? Moreover, we just came out of the Yun family half an hour ago. The few young men from Yun family could not help but sneer. Everyone's gaze turned and saw the young man on the second floor. They all recognized him as a member of the Yun family. They looked at each other and nodded. It seemed like there was a misunderstanding. However, just as this thought arose, before they could take a sip of tea, a few people rushed in together and shouted in panic. "The Yun family is being attacked by a strong enemy. Our family is going to be exterminated." This time, everyone was stunned. Before those people could run out, someone stopped one of them, grabbed him, and asked, "What's going on?" The person who was intercepted quickly shook his head. "The Yun family is being attacked by a celestial warrior. It's a 17-year-old boy. He's very tall, very handsome, and very cold. He's holding a little girl. Even the head of the Yun family is very nervous." He ordered all the young people to retreat. As soon as he finished speaking, the restaurant fell into a dead silence. It was actually true. The moment he opened his mouth, he told all the young people to retreat. This wasn't an attack. This was extermination. Boom! On the second floor of the restaurant, a table suddenly exploded. The expressions of the young men and women of the Yun family tightened, because when they heard the description of the messenger, they remembered the group of people they met at the entrance of their house. Thinking of this, they all panicked and hurriedly rushed towards the Yun family. Seeing them like this, everyone let out a strange cry and quickly rushed out of the restaurant. In the sky above the Yun family, Yun Nuoxing and Yun Feng didn't know that this matter had already spread to almost half of Xingzhou City. The latter looked nervous and didn't have time to pay attention to it, while the former looked unhurried. "Friend, give me some face. No matter how the Yun family has wronged you, we are willing to pay compensation. Can you let the Yun family go?" Yin Feng asked nervously as he cupped his fist. Obviously, he didn't believe that Yun Nuoxing was really just here to take a look. In his opinion, this just here to take a look could be understood as, if they took a good look, then everything would be fine. If they didn't take a good look, then they could go down and report. Oh? Yin Nuoxing raised his eyebrows and said jokingly, "What if it's a human life?" As soon as these words were said, a bone-chilling coldness rolled in the hearts of everyone in the Yun family. Could it be that a human life was involved? Everyone knew what a celestial warrior stronger than their head, could do to this group of damn brats. How could they be so blind to provoke such a person? At this time, Yin Feng's heart was broken. No matter how much he paid, he might not be able to exchange a human life. If this person was an extremely talented young man, then it would be even more powerful. In the eyes of some people who valued friendship and righteousness, this matter was not even worth a life. In Yin Feng's opinion, Yin Nuoxing's evil smile was already a death sentence for them. "I'm really just here to take a look." Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly and waved his hand, saying, "Don't be so nervous. I don't mean any harm." Seeing that everyone was tense, Yin Nuoxing shook his head helplessly and said, "Let's put it this way. I'm a little interested in something in the Yun family, so I wanted to take a look." "Really? Just here to take a look?" Seeing that Yin Nuoxing repeatedly emphasized that he was just here to take a look, Yin Feng felt a little strange. Seeing that the former did not have the slightest intention to fight, he was a little convinced. However, he did not withdraw from the battle state, afraid that he would be killed if he was careless. "Yes, I'm here to take a look." Yin Nuoxing nodded, but the space beside him flashed. Immediately, Yuan Shi and the others appeared. They looked at the former and then at Yin Feng, and asked curiously, "Can't talk? Are you going to fight? How is it?" Xian asked with concern. This time, everyone in the Yin family was horrified. One was not enough. 5 at once. Qin Yin also brought Yi Yun along, making them mistakenly think that the latter was also a celestial warrior. Does God want to destroy our Yin family? 1, 2, 5 celestials. I'm going to faint. I'm afraid there are no more than 50 celestial warriors in the entire Xingzhou Empire. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly as he looked at the panicking crowd below. There were even a few disciples who had fainted from fright. Looking at Yuan Shi and the others, he smiled bitterly and said, "Don't come up here to scare people. So annoying." At this time, Yishi noticed that a lot of life auras were rapidly approaching. She could not help but sigh. She gently broke free from Yin Nuoxing's arms and stood in the void. With one hand on her small waist and the other pointing at Yin Feng, she shouted impatiently, "I'll give you 2 choices. Sit down and have a friendly chat, or wait for us to fight our way in." Being pointed at by that slender little finger, Yin Feng directly fainted. Even this little girl was a celestial warrior. Many of the disciples below rolled their eyes and fainted directly on the ground. It was impossible to live in this world. A 10-year-old girl was a celestial warrior. After coming back to their senses, Yin Feng and the others responded excitedly. "Chat, chat, drink tea, and chat." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. 10 minutes later, when everyone who received the news gathered at the entrance of the Yun family, they could not help but be stunned when they saw the deathly silence and desolation. What happened to the agreed war of extermination? Where were the celestial warriors? Could it be that it was already over? At this time, the 2 guards at the entrance of the Yun family had changed. Seeing everyone gathered, they smiled bitterly. They did not expect this matter to spread. One of the guards smiled bitterly and took a step forward. He cupped his fist to the people who came from Xingzhou City and said, "The Patriarch is receiving an important guest. Please do not be too noisy." Receiving an important guest? Everyone was confused. Just as everyone was puzzled, a few figures quickly passed through the crowd and arrived at the entrance. When the 2 guards saw them, they were stunned and said respectfully, "Miss Qing, young master who, everyone in the Yun family is now in the main hall." The guard's last sentence stunned Yin Qing and the other youths. They hurriedly nodded their heads and ran towards the Yun family. "Yin Qing, do you think it's them?" Yin, who did not forget to ask as he ran. Yin Qing was slightly startled. Mei Mao flashed a few strands of panic, then shook her head and said, "No, no, it's just a coincidence. It must be." The few of them nodded. If it really was the few people they saw, could it be that it was the result of them taking a few more glances? Yun Xing and the others ran all the way and saw that almost all the youths in the family had gathered outside the main hall. When the youths saw the former and the others, they all said nervously, "Sister Qing, Big Brother, Yi and the others are already inside." Yun Qing's head exploded. Yun Yi was the most talented person in the Yun family, and his ability to refine talismans was stronger than all the younger generation. He could be said to be the most outstanding person in the past 1,000 years, and he was usually in closed-door cultivation. Even the patriarch and the elders could not move him, but he actually came out today. Without much hesitation, Yun Xing and Yun Hu squeezed through the passageway and carefully pushed open the door. They saw Yun Feng sitting on the main seat of the great hall, pretending to be calm. Below the main seat sat a group of people that she had never expected. The elders were all standing at the side like spears, and even Yun, he did not dare to sit down. Xiao Qing, seeing the woman who barged in, Yun Feng, who was sitting on the main seat, instantly lost his calm. He waved his hand to dismiss her and carefully glanced at Yin Nuoxing, afraid that he would get angry. Yin Nuoxing and the others also saw the people who barged in. They turned their heads and saw that it was the people they had just seen. They smiled faintly and nodded. "Hello." When the elders saw Yun Qing and the others barge in, they were all speechless, but now they were all stunned. What was going on? "Xiao Qing, don't speak." When a handsome youth standing at the front saw Yun Qing enter, his expression changed, and he hurriedly used his spiritual sense to transmit his voice. Yun Qing's pretty face changed. Seeing that Yun Yi was also so quiet, she obediently nodded her head and stood at the back with Yun Hu, not saying a word. They also discovered that many of the younger generation were standing quietly in the main hall. All of them had complicated expressions in their eyes, and no one knew what they were thinking. As for Yun Nuoxing, after looking at Yun Qing, she turned her head and looked at Yun Feng, who was sitting on the main seat. For a moment, she did not know what to say. Could it be that she wanted to see their family tree? It felt too rude. However, this silence made the Yun family members even more nervous. Their minds were tense. Yuan Shi and the others were also helpless. Yin Nuoxing didn't seem to know what to say, and Yi Shi wanted to slap him. If this guy didn't open his mouth, he would scare the Yun family members to the point of going crazy. Thinking of this, Yi Shi couldn't help but jump down from her chair. She turned around and rolled her eyes at Yin Nuoxing. "Brother Nuo, you're wearing down their spirits. It's not like they're here to negotiate. Just say it." Yin Nuoxing laughed bitterly. "Be elegant, not fierce." How could Yi Shi not know what he was thinking? She helplessly patted his leg, then looked at the person sitting on the main seat and snorted. "I want to see your family tree. Give me a direct answer. Don't drag it out or avoid it. 1 or 2 words will solve it." At this moment, all of his tensed-up mental state collapsed with a crash. Chapter 480. Clan. Genealogy? Everyone in the Yin family was stunned. Yi Shi's voice was very loud, and even the people outside could hear it clearly. Almost everyone was confused when they heard this. Even Yin Feng had a strange expression. Looking at the genealogy? What the hell? Well, that's it. We want to find someone. That person's surname is Yun, so we came to take a look. Yin Nuoxing nodded. He couldn't say too much, so he said that he was looking for someone. This. Yin Qing was slightly stunned and looked at the other two for a while. The two of them thought for a while and nodded. The genealogy wasn't a big secret. It only recorded the names of some people. They couldn't offend this person. Genealogy? The expressions of Yun Qing, Yun Yi, and the others changed. The young people had strange expressions. This heaven realm expert came here in such a big way just to check the genealogy. Yin Feng nodded and said, "It's not difficult. Do you want to see it now?" Yin Nuoxing nodded. They had even kidnapped Yi Yun on this trip. Even if they left a note, Yi Ding would probably be a little flustered. They didn't plan to stay for long. The sooner they settled it, the better. They had to leave some time to walk around Star City. Fellow Taoist, please follow me. Seeing this, Yun Feng nodded and stood up first. He made a gesture of invitation. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly and nodded. He didn't correct anything. He pushed open the door of the hall and saw the crowd of young people. He couldn't help but reprimand them and tell them to cultivate. Then, he led Yun Nuoxing and the others to the ancestral hall. Behind them, Yun Yi and a group of elders followed. They were all slightly nervous. They were worried that Yun Feng would follow Yun Nuoxing and the others alone. After taking a few turns, they arrived at the entrance of the ancestral hall. Yun Feng gently pushed the door open and walked in. He bowed in front of the many steels. Yun Nuoxing looked curiously and followed in. A faint smell of incense wafted over, causing his nose to twitch. At the same time, he frowned slightly. He felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. The ancestral hall is the most sacred place for every family. In fact, he only needs to take out the genealogy. There's no need for us to follow, unless it's a very honorable guest. Yishi whispered telepathically. Moreover, there's some telekinesis here that hasn't dissipated yet. Brother Nuo is sensitive and can easily sense it. Yun Nuoxing nodded in surprise. She raised her head and saw Yun Feng solemnly handing a yellowed book to Yun Nuoxing. Yun Nuoxing thought for a while and took it with both hands. He nodded at Yun Feng and then walked to the front of the incense altar under Yun Feng's surprised gaze. There was a name written on each of the wooden tablets. After glancing at the wooden plaques, Yun Nuoxing lowered her head. The genealogy was held in the air by her soul power. She then put her palms together and bowed to the wooden plaques on the altar. She murmured, "Sorry to disturb you." Xian understood and smiled. She held Yishi's hand and walked over. Yuanxi sighed helplessly and walked forward with Qinyan. They stood beside Yun Nuoxing and bowed gently. Yishi understood very well that Yun Nuoxing was the praise of death. In his heart, death was somewhat sacred. It was not that he yearned for death, but that he was very respectful to those who had already passed away. Yun Feng was a little surprised. Even the other members of the Yun family were confused. Why did this guy, who was clamoring to see the genealogy as soon as he walked in, suddenly become respectful here? Yin also had a strange expression on her face. However, when she thought that she came with Yun Nuoxing and the others, she hesitated for a while and quickly walked forward. She closed her eyes and bowed slightly with her palms together. Under the strange gazes of the Yun family, they opened their eyes together after half a minute. Then, Yun Nuoxing carefully flipped open the yellowed genealogy book. He was so careful that it was as if he was holding a precious item and was afraid that it would be broken. She skipped the beginning of the genealogy and turned directly to the names. Several pairs of eyes looked at the names on the book as if they were scrutinizing them. It took only a few seconds to read a page. For a time, there was only the sound of pages being flipped in the ancestral hall. Yin Feng and the others were a little nervous. They didn't know what would happen if they found the names or not. Time passed slowly as everyone broke out in cold sweat. In just 5 minutes, Yun Nuoxing and the others had finished watching. However, in these 5 minutes, everyone in the Yun family looked nervous. After reading to the end, Yun Nuoxing gently flipped her hands and covered the yellowed genealogy book. Then, she let out a long sigh and shook her head helplessly. This made Yun Feng and the others tense. She didn't find the names? Or? Xian and the others also let out a long sigh. They were a little confused. Should they say that they were disappointed or that they already knew? They didn't know either. It was just that before this trip to the Yun family started, they had already guessed this ending. Although it made Yun Nuoxing depressed, there was no other way. They couldn't force it. Thank you, Patriarch Yun. Yun Nuoxing walked to Yin Feng and sighed. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't disappointed, but she was also a little glad. It seemed that she didn't want to find out about her identity in the small world. We will find it eventually. Don't be too anxious. Xian stepped forward and patted Yun Nuoxing's shoulder as he said softly. Yun Nuoxing shook her head and smiled bitterly. Her intuition told her that it shouldn't be so simple. Yin Feng took the yellowed genealogy book and stroked it gently. Then, he raised his head and said very carefully, "I don't know which name you are looking for. Some names are not recorded in the genealogy book. Although many of the names recorded in other places have been destroyed, I can still remember some of them." Yin Nuoxing understood. If she needed help, she just had to say the name. After hesitating for a while, Yin Nuoxing saw some sincerity in Yun Feng's eyes. He didn't lie to her. After thinking for a while, she shook her head. This method was too difficult, so she stretched out her hand. Yin Feng looked and nodded. He also stretched out his hand and held Yin Nuoxing's hand. Both of them used a little force, but the latter closed her eyes directly. After a while, Yin Nuoxing opened her light purple gold eyes. She sighed, shook her head, and said, "No, the power of the bloodline is different. Is there anything I can do to help? Let me borrow the genealogy book." "I owe you one," Yin Nuoxing said again. Hearing this, Yin Feng thought for a while. The two middle-aged men beside him were startled. They whispered something to Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing didn't eavesdrop. She just took a step back and quietly waited for them to come to a conclusion. After a long while, Yin Feng nodded. Clasping his hands, he said solemnly, "Fellow Taoist, you are also a sky realm master. You must know some secrets about this world and the Xianlong continent. Yin Feng also has a request, or rather, a request from millions of masters. I wonder if you can help me?" Yin Nuoxing thought for a while and asked tentatively, "You want to talk about this year's Xianlong ritual?" "Yes." Yin Feng nodded. Almost every sky realm master knew that the Xianlong continent was only a small world. The sacrificial fire of the Xianlong ritual could possibly connect the Xianlong continent and the God realm. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Yun, Yi, and the others. Yin Nuoxing also noticed these small movements. Naturally, she guessed what he was thinking. She nodded slightly and said, "This year's Xianlong ritual will be held as usual." Yin Feng was slightly stunned and looked at her suspiciously. Yin Nuoxing nodded and said, "We know about what happened in the Long Lan Empire. Therefore, this year's ritual will be held as usual. Just trust me." Seeing Yin Feng's strange expression, Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and didn't bother to explain too much. She then walked out of the ancestral hall. The people of the Yin family outside hurriedly made way for them. Seeing them walk out with Yin Feng, they were very curious about what they were talking about. However, no one dared to ask. Walking outside, Yin Nuoxing cupped her fists at Yin Feng and the others. Then, she took Yi Shi in her arms and flew into the sky like a gust of wind. Behind her, Xian and the others hurriedly followed. It wasn't until Yin Nuoxing and the others disappeared into the sky that Yin Feng and the rest of the Yin family heaved a sigh of relief. Their backs were drenched in sweat, as if they had just escaped from the gates of hell. "Master," the middle-aged man at the side couldn't help but say, "It's okay. Just trust them. 5 super strong sky realm masters at such a young age." Yin Feng sighed and looked at Yun, Yi, and the others. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Deal with the matters outside. Don't let it leak out. Also, get ready to participate in the mystery dragon ritual in half a month." Yun, Yi, and the others were stunned and opened their mouths wide. Huh? Didn't the mystery dragon ritual lose its meaning 3 years ago? Looking at the master's disappearing figure, the young boys and girls were all in a daze for a while. Then, they all went back to prepare. Since the master said that they were going to participate, then they should go and prepare. After leaving the Yin family, Yin Nuoxing and the others didn't rush back. It was still early, so they found a restaurant to rest. After resting for a while, Yuan, she said, "Nuoxing, isn't the power of your bloodline. What's that?" He also knew that when 2 similar bloodlines were near each other, there would be a reaction. However, he also remembered that Lan Exine said that Yin Nuoxing was a descendant of the gods. Therefore, his bloodline power should be extremely terrifying. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be possible to tell the difference. Brother Nua's bloodline power hasn't fully awakened yet. There's only a little bit of gold mixed in. Therefore, if there's a similar bloodline power, he can still sense it. However, when it's completely golden, there's no way to tell. Yishi giggled as she shook her two sparkling little feet. The restaurant was quiet, and there wasn't anyone there. They were all attracted by what happened in the Yun family, which made Yun Nuoxing rather happy. After drinking a few mouthfuls of tea, Yi Yun's expression changed. Her jade-like hand hurriedly took out a jade slip, and when she heard the news that came from it, her pretty face instantly turned pale. "What's wrong?" Seeing her pale face, Qin Yin asked faintly. She even took a sip of tea. Yi Yun's expression froze, and the jade slip in her hand involuntarily slipped onto the table. Yin Nuoxing was also stunned. He looked at Yi Yun, who was in a daze, and then picked up the jade slip. As his soul rushed into it, he heard a piece of news that made his face twitch slightly. He then picked up the teacup on the table, took a big gulp, and said, "Let's go." Something happened. Zian and the others were stunned. When they reacted, they saw that Yin Nuoxing and Yi Shi had already jumped up and walked outside. They quickly followed. Qin Yin even helped the pale-faced Yi Yun up. She didn't forget to ask, "What's wrong?" The 7 great empires have sent their troops. Chapter 481. After coming out of the restaurant, the few of them soared into the sky. They didn't care about the gazes of others and directly rushed towards the horizon. It wasn't until they were out of Star Providence City that they allowed Xiaofeng to grow bigger. The few of them rode on Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng let out a cry and directly turned into a flame. Together with the light element of Yun Nuo planet, it flew towards the dragon Mist Empire as if it was chasing the stars and the moon. Why at such an urgent moment? During the flight, Yin Nuoxing also took out the jade slip and let everyone hear it. Not only did he let Zian and the others hear it, but he also sent it to Nightmare and Yaohua. Everyone had a strange expression on their faces. I was wondering why Tiana City was acting strange recently. Not only did they send out troops, but they also summoned many martial artists. Yaohua muttered in a restaurant in Tiana City. When did this happen? Yin Nuoxing was slightly startled. The 8 empires kept each other in check. This kind of invasion by 7 empires was really inconceivable, unless the 7 empires had a common goal. At this time, Yin Nuoxing also thought about it. Speaking of common goals, there was only one, the Mystery Dragon Ritual. This was a large-scale martial arts event that had not been held for 3 years. But this kind of invasion, what was the point? Even if they took over the Dragon Mist Empire, the sacred relic could not be returned. It should be in the next 2 days. Little Star, have you obtained the qualification to participate in the Mystery Dragon Ritual? Huiji asked. I will participate with the Dragon Mist royal family, if there are no accidents. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Now that the accidents had happened, if they really fought, the Mystery Dragon Ritual would be ruined. He did not want to wait until next year. Ah, the 9 people exclaimed. Wasn't that the place where the 7 empires sent out their troops? We obtained the qualification in Tiana City. The 7 empires sent out their troops and took away most of their forces. If anything happens, just let us know. We should be able to force the Tianhe royal family to withdraw their troops, Mu Ling said after thinking for a moment. Be careful. Yin Nuoxing nodded, then looked at Nightmare and said, Be careful if you're not coming back. Nightmare scratched his head and said, It's fine, it's fine. Boss, don't worry. I'm in the Yin-Yang city right now. If something happens, I can make the Yin-Yang Empire retreat. You can rest assured. I'm really not worried about you. I'm just saying. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. He was not worried about this fellow at all. There was probably no one in this small world who could do anything to him. Should we split up and go to the other empires? Would Spirit thought for a moment before saying, If we can make the 7 empires withdraw their troops, then I think it'll be fine. Yin Nuoxing nodded. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, No, I'm worried about you. Although you have the divine artifacts that Jin Wang and the others left behind, you can't use them unless it's a critical moment. It's too risky to let the 9 of you go to the royal families of other empires. After all, There were still people in this small world who could threaten them. All right, the 9 of them replied gloomily. Then what about the other 5 empires? Nightmare asked again. Brother Nual, there's still me, there's still me. I can also stop an empire from sending troops. Yishi raised her long sleeves and smiled at Yun Nuashing. However, she was slapped down by Yun Nuashing with a dark face and said, You just stay by my side. Yun Nuashing pondered for a moment. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, They probably won't fight as soon as they see each other. The 7 empires should still be here for the profound dragon ritual. Moreover, the matter of the dragon Mist Empire's holy artifact has already been resolved. As long as the negotiations are good, they won't fight. If the negotiations are not good, then there's still us. F*CK. You told us not to take the risk, but you're messing around? The 9 of them immediately cursed when they heard this, causing Yun Nuashing to smile bitterly. Have you forgotten who I am? Yun Nuashing grinned. He really didn't believe that there was anyone in this small world who could withstand the firepower of his arsenal. You're a green chicken and a crossdresser at that. Yao Hua and the others directly rolled their eyes and gave him the middle finger. F*CK. Yun Nuashing almost smashed the jade scroll into pieces with a slap. That's all. Just be careful. Yun Nuashing reminded them again. Yes, I know. You guys are the ones who should be careful. It's not fun to be on the battlefield. Don't get hurt. Mu Ling nodded and closed the image in the jade scroll. Over at Heavenly River City, Yao Hua and the others looked at the disappearing image. They looked at each other and grinned. Let's go. Let's do something big. Yun Nuashing sighed and couldn't help but murmur, They really know how to cause trouble. Everything should be going smoothly, but they just have to create a problem at such a critical moment. Yian was stunned when she heard what Yun Nuashing and the others said. The 7 empires invaded the dragon Mist Empire, and she was burning with anxiety. However, Yun Nuashing and the others seemed to have decided the entire situation with just a few words. She couldn't help but take a deep breath. When one's strength reached a certain level, they could directly affect the situation on the battlefield. This was something she knew as well. Seeing Yun Nuashing and the others who followed behind, Yi Ding was slightly delighted. He knew that Yun Nuashing and the other 4 were all Sky Realm experts. However, he then smiled bitterly. He remembered that Yun Nuashing said that he wouldn't interfere with the matters of the imperial family. He didn't know if he would help. Yi Daofeng's eyes flickered as he looked at Yun Nuashing for a while. Then, he actually bowed slightly to Yun Nuashing and the others and respectfully said, Mr. Yun, may I? However, before he could finish his words, Yun Nuashing waved his hand. Seeing him like this, Yi Ding smiled bitterly. Yi Daofeng and the others were also startled. Only Yian couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. She clearly heard the conversation between Yun Nuashing and the others in the sky just now. I'm already thinking of a way to stop the 7 empires. At present, what I can be sure of is that the Flaming Sun Empire and the Sky River Empire can be forced to retreat, but the remaining 5. Yun Nuashing's words made Yi Ding and the others who were slightly disappointed feel refreshed. They quickly regained their spirits and didn't care how they received the news. Yi Daofeng couldn't help but feel a little happy. After thinking for a while, he smiled bitterly and said, Originally, the Meng Dragon Guards could only compete with one of the empires. But now, they're facing the allied forces of the 7 empires. Even if there are only 5 empires left, it will still be very troublesome. Unexpectedly, Yun Nuashing shook his head and said, It's not troublesome. The 5 of us can block all of them, but it's inevitable that we will accidentally hit the ordinary soldiers. In that situation, blood will flow like a river and dye the mountains and rivers red. I don't think anyone would want to see that scene. Hearing this, Yi Daofeng and Yi Ding were startled, then nodded. They also knew that the 7 empires came together for the sacred object. The profound dragon ritual of the martial arts world hadn't been held for 3 years. It wasn't only the Dragon Mist Empire that was anxious, the other 7 empires were also very anxious. At this time, They actually sent troops to the Dragon Mist Empire. When they first received the news, Yi Ding and the others were so shocked that their faces were heavy. Even their father couldn't keep calm. He hurriedly gave some orders to defend Dragon Mist City. Then, he went to the depths of the palace, wanting to call the former and the others' great-grandfathers over. He could help a lot. At this time, an armored soldier suddenly rushed into the main hall. Without saying a word, he knelt down on one knee, causing Yin Nuoxing, Yi Ding, and the others to turn their gazes. Then, they heard the soldier quickly say, "Your Highness, the allied forces of the Seven Empires are already 50 miles away from Dragon Mist City. Moreover, they are still speeding up." Hearing this, Yi Daofeng and the others' faces changed. Yin Nuoxing was also a little surprised. Strange. Weren't they still 100 miles away when they passed by just now? An army of 700,000 shouldn't be able to travel so quickly. It's a little strange that they are already at the city gates in just a few minutes. There are traces of talisman masters in the allied forces of the Seven Empires. The talisman they use can increase the speed of their advance. It's the best choice for a surprise attack. I estimate that they will be 10 miles away in 10 minutes. Excluding the time it took for me to come in to send the message, I'm afraid. The soldier didn't even raise his head as he continued to speak quickly. Let's go and take a look first. Yi Daofeng waved his hand and quickly ran out of the main hall. Yin Nuoxing also nodded and directly flew out with the others, rushing toward the city walls of Dragon Mist City. Just as they flew out of the palace, suddenly, a thunderous drum sound came from afar. Then, it spread to the entire Dragon Mist City. Even the palace could hear it. Are they going to attack? Hearing the rapid drum sound, Yi Daofeng and the others' faces turned serious. Chapter 482. Not long after the drums rang out, the earth began to shake. A black wave suddenly surged towards the direction of Dragon Mist City from the distant green horizon. The rumbling sound of footsteps landing on the ground resounded like thunder in the sky. An enormous pressure was exerted on everyone's hearts. All Soul Stage and above experts of the Mang Dragon Guard scattered to the various defensive lines and guard against the Martial Kings and Soul Kings on the other side. A middle-aged man on the city wall had a grave expression as his stern shout resounded through the entire city wall. Upon hearing his command, a large number of people responded immediately. Then, one after another, figures flew out at lightning speed. Everyone, the Seven Empires have joined forces to attack our Dragon Mist Empire. Today's great battle concerns the survival of the Dragon Mist Empire. Therefore, let's go all out. The middle-aged man who had just given the command spoke once again in a deep voice as his gaze slowly swept across everyone. Everyone nodded heavily with grave expressions when they heard this. This battle concerned the survival of the empire. As the city wall entered a state of preparation for battle, the black sea of people also surged over amidst the battle cries that soared into the sky. Streaks of light flew over in the air above this sea of people. Clearly, these were the Heaven Stage experts of the Seven Empires. They were also the ones who caused the pressure on the Mang Dragon Guard to increase greatly. When the endless black sea of people was just 1,000 meters away from the city wall, it suddenly stopped. A wave of killing intent that soared into the sky spread out from within. In the end, it directly enveloped the entire city wall. The army paused. Streaks of light flew through the air. Subsequently, numerous figures stood in the air. Their gazes contained cold smiles as they looked at the tightly guarded city wall. General, just as the two armies were facing each other, streaks of light rapidly leaped up from below the city wall and arrived in front of the middle-aged man. The sudden arrival of these people also stunned that person. Soon after, he was somewhat stunned. "Your Highness, why have you all come? This is not the place to talk. Quickly return." After speaking, he extended his hand to grab Yi Daofeng and the others, wanting to throw them back. Yi Daofeng's brows furrowed as he shook off the general's hand and said sternly, "The Empire is facing a great enemy. and the Empire is in trouble. How can we cower behind the front lines and fear battle? You. The general's expression froze when he saw Yi Daofeng's determined appearance. Soon after, he violently nodded his head. Your Highness's ambition is far from what we can compare to. Today, please take charge of the situation. We will fight to the death. The first prince was proficient in battle. He was only 26 years old and had followed the army to battle many times. He was invincible, but he had never held any position. This was something that everyone in the Dragon Mist Empire knew. Wow, so many people. There must be at least 1 million people here, right? On the stairs of the city wall, Yin Nuoxing and the others walked up unhurriedly. When they reached the edge of the city wall, they couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the dense crowd below. They had never seen such a vast and mighty scene before. The strange thing was that the 5 of them were wearing masks. Before they reached the top of the city wall, Yi Daofeng took out 5 masks and let them wear it. He even draped a large shirt over them. No one knew why. When the general saw Yun Nuoxing and the others, especially the child, his face darkened. Just as he was about to shout, he saw Yi Daofeng shaking his head at him. Yi Daofeng's eyes shone brightly. The general was stunned and had some guesses in his heart. Yin Nuoxing turned around and reached out to touch his mask. He looked at Xian and the others with a faint smile and said, "Do you believe me if I say that I can wipe out the 1,000,000-strong army below with one strike of my sword?" "Of course we believe you. You monster." Yuan Shi weakly rolled his eyes. With the strength of his monster brother, not to mention 1,000,000-strong army, even 1,000,000-strong immortal step experts would probably not be able to return. With the power that he had destroyed 3 eternal weapons, who could doubt Yun Nuoxing's destructive power? Xian also nodded seriously, causing Yun Nuoxing to roll his eyes. "Haha, nephew Yi Daofeng, it's been a few years since we last met. How is your father?" As the 2 armies faced each other, a powerful and faint laughter suddenly resounded over the city walls. "Qianghaya." Hearing this laughter, the faces of Yi Daofeng and the others on the city wall immediately turned cold. They spat out a name that was extremely prestigious in the Star Zhao Empire. After the laughter sounded, a bright golden light suddenly soared into the sky from the army, after which it hovered in the sky. Everyone turned their eyes and saw a man in golden clothes hovering in the sky. Behind him, waves of flames were like rolling waves. Stepping on the waves of fire, he was like a fire god. After the appearance of the man in golden clothes, earth-shattering cheers suddenly resounded from the Black Army. Obviously, Qianghaya had an extremely high reputation even in the 7 Great Empires Coalition Army. Yi Daofeng calmly looked at Qianghaya. He took a few steps forward and said coldly, "Thanks to Uncle Qiong's concern, my father is still healthy and can even fight in the midst of an army of 10,000. One called him nephew, while the other called him uncle. It sounded extremely murderous and was far from being as intimate as the other 2. "Nephew, I won't be long-winded. I just want to ask, what is the purpose of Uncle Qiong's visit?" Yi Daofeng waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "Since Nephew Daofeng is a smart person, let's get straight to the point. The reason we're here is to make the mysterious dragon ritual, which has been silent for 3 years, appear once again." Qianghaya coldly laughed as he indifferently said, "Oh, are you really only here for the mystery dragon ritual?" Yi Daofeng also coldly laughed and pointed his finger at the army below. Was there a need to mobilize such a large army just for the mystery dragon ritual? The Dragon Mist Empire once promised that they would find the sacred relic within 2 years. Now, it is already the 4th year. If your country's efficiency is so low, why don't you let us help? Qianghaya said with a smile, but a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Yi Daofeng coldly laughed in his heart. They said they would help, but the army of 700,000 had already arrived at the foot of the Dragon Mist City, who would bring a bunch of soldiers to the Imperial City to help. After thinking for a while, Yi Daofeng suddenly said, "This year's Mystery Dragon ritual will be held as usual. The Heaven Worship ceremony will also be held." "Haha, nephew, you have no proof. The Mystery Dragon ritual will not be held just because you said so. What's the point of a Mystery Dragon ritual without the sacred relic? Could it be that you have found the sacred relic? Xianghaya wantonly laughed out loud. Looking at Yi Daofeng's hesitant look, he did not believe that he had found the sacred relic. Yi Daofeng's eyebrows twitched, and his expression turned ugly. Xianghaya saw this and laughed even more unscrupulously. If this year's heaven worship ceremony is really held as usual, I, Xianghaya, will strip naked and run 10 laps around the Dragon Mist City. Yin Nuoxing and Yuan Shi immediately spat out mouthfuls of saliva. The former was even trembling from holding back his laughter. In his opinion, if Jun Luo was going to bring people to the God Realm, she would definitely bring the sacred relic to participate in the mystery dragon ritual. If that was the case, this Xianghaya would really be running naked around the Dragon Mist City. Yi Daofeng's expression turned strange when he heard this. He glanced at Yun Nuoxing, who was laughing uncontrollably and had an answer in his heart. However, he was not in a hurry to say it. Instead, he remained silent. He knew that Xianghaya said this because he believed that they would not be able to find the sacred relic. However, he did not seem to be willing to start a war directly. Even if the Dragon Mist City was breached, they would not be able to find the sacred relic. Or rather, their progress in finding the sacred relic was not as fast as Yi Daofeng and the others. After all, Yi Daofeng and the others were the most familiar with the Dragon Mist Empire. Pressure. Thinking of this, Yi Daofeng came to a realization. Xianghaya had brought the armies of the 7 empires here. Conquering Dragon Mist City was probably only secondary. His real goal was to force them to find the sacred relic. However, if the mystery dragon ritual was successfully held, would they retreat? Would they bring an army of 700,000 to wander around and then return? Obviously, that was not very likely. However, if the mystery dragon ritual is not held, Xianghaya smiled faintly. Then, my army will not have made a wasted trip. His words were very clear. If the mystery dragon ritual was held, the world would be in great luck, and they might even have to fight. However, if it was not held, then they would start a war now. Yi Daofeng definitely knew what to choose, and Xianghaya also knew what the former would choose. There's another condition. From now on, until the end of the mystery dragon ritual, the army of the 7 empires must retreat 300 miles away, Yi Daofeng said in a low voice. Hearing this, Xianghaya narrowed his eyes. He could not see anything from Yi Daofeng's calm expression. Just as he was about to refuse, a thought flashed through his mind, and he could not help but sneer. I have brought many young disciples with me on this trip. All the empires value martial arts. How about we let the young people spar? If you win, we will retreat 500 miles away. If you lose, I will not bully you and retreat 100 miles. Xianghaya smiled faintly. Not bully you? Retreating 100 miles, as if they were giving alms, was simply an insult. Moreover, there were traces of talisman masters in the 7 great empires. 100 miles was nothing to them. They could fly across it in a few minutes. Yi Daofeng frowned and looked at Yi Ding and the others. Then he said, Rules. Those below the Soul Realm can choose 5 people. 1 person from each side can fight. The winner can continue until one side loses. Xianghaya smiled. After thinking for a while, he added, Moreover, since it is a battlefield, life and death are up to fate. Yin Nuoxing and the others laughed when they heard this condition. If there was an ultimate master, then wouldn't they be able to defeat the 5 people on the other side? Yi Daofeng and the others were also a little worried. Those who had experienced the baptism of the battlefield would have a very fierce aura. Moreover, whether it was the Tao they grasped or the techniques they cultivated, they would all be refined. After killing on the battlefield and going through layers of elimination, those who remained would be the elites. Do you need help? Seeing their hesitation, Yin Nuoxing transmitted her voice softly. When Yi Daofeng heard this, he smiled bitterly. Before he could say anything, Yin Nuoxing transmitted her voice again. It's fine. We can suppress our realms. They can't see through it. Since the rules were set by us, then we will choose first. Xiangsheng, you go first. Xianghaya grinned and glanced at the army. At this moment, from the direction of the army below, a soldier walked out. This person was clad in black armor and had a simple and unadorned gigantic sword on his back. He looked simple and capable, but at the same time, he was like an incomparably sharp sword, capable of killing anyone he faced. This person walked to 100 meters in front of the army and took off his helmet, revealing a rather handsome face. Then he took out the huge sword on his back and stomped it on the ground, causing cracks to appear. He raised his head and stared at the top of the city wall. He shouted, "Come at me together. I will fight the 5 of you alone." "Heh, this brat's arrogance knows no bounds." Yin Nuoxing could not help but laugh. Xiong Sheng. He has quite a bit of fame in the Star Zhao Empire's army. 6th level Soul Realm. He has grasped the Great Earth Tao. The attack of the great sword in his hand is as heavy as the earth, but his speed is extremely fast. He is a difficult opponent to deal with. Yi Ding whispered. Seeing this person appear, the hearts of the people on the city wall suddenly tightened. To use Xiong Sheng right from the start, was he really going to fight the 5 of them alone? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.